Welcome to You Talk Sports. Day 3 of NFL free agency is in the books, and the players are starting to land in their new homes. And now is the time for us to reassess the fantasy value of each player who's landed a new home and to realize the opportunity that's before us right now to speculate on how these players are going to do and what's going to happen in the draft, and to draft a team right now, before the NFL draft, before the NFL camp. Right now is the best time to draft a team to win the $2 million tournament on Underdog. And we're going to be going through here in today's episode the best strategies for playing best ball, for playing in this tournament on Underdog, as well as the player projections for where players are valued right now. There's a lot that you need to understand as far as how the draft works, the rules work, this roster strategy works. We're going to be covering all of that tonight, giving you everything you need to succeed in this best ball tournament on Underdog. And as always, here in You Talk Sports, we are the talk show where you get to be in the show. So if you're watching us live on YouTube and you would like to come join us up here on Zoom and give your take, I'm going to drop the link to the Zoom in the chat right now. And I'm going to start to open up the Zoom room. If you want to join us, we would love to have you up here in the show as we talk fantasy football today in depth. And it's always great to get fans from different parts of the country, different takes, to get unbiased eyes on players and evaluations, and to get hometown insights. A lot of times our fans from around the country can bring insights into players from the local market that we couldn't get in the national market. And that's the best time to find sleepers or to find out players not to draft. That's really one of the main keys to winning a best ball tournament, to winning a tournament, is knowing which players not to draft. And so that's what we're going to be covering tonight. We're going to be breaking down, especially the quarterbacks, when to go for a quarterback and why, who are the quarterbacks you should be looking at for this type of tournament. And then we're going to end with doing a mock draft online on Underdog tonight. So as we always do, I do want to welcome our audience members that have jumped up here, Jeremiah and Cameron. And I'd love to hear from each of you guys. What do you feel is the move that most people maybe missed, or are kind of not paying a lot of attention to, but really should be paying a lot of attention to in the NFL free agency? Let's start with Jeremiah, and then we'll hear from Cameron.
Oh, what's up, guys? The biggest move I think people aren't paying attention to is DeAndre Swift to Chicago. I think fantasy speaking, that's going to pay off big. Seeing him going in the 7th, 8th rounds in some of the mock drafts I've been seeing, that's a steal at that position, I feel.
Yeah, DeAndre Swift. Interesting that you mentioned him. You're for sure right that he's one that's not getting talked about a lot. And he was the very first move of free agency. Isn't that, he kind of broke the ice and got things going. And Jeremiah, do you feel like he will for sure be the starter? They drafted Roschon Johnson last year. We were hearing they were very high on him, but he didn't really do much last year. Caleb Herbert is back. What you think, it's going to be an open competition, or what do you expect to see happen there?
I expect DeAndre Swift to get the majority of the carries. Definitely, they're going to use a little change of pace with Johnson and Herbert, who I thought played well when he got some time last year as well.
Makes sense. Yeah, and Swift, I love Swift in PPR leagues because he's a guy that can catch the ball a lot. He was really underutilized as a receiver last year in Philly. Philly does not like to throw the ball to the running back. Jalen Hurts rolls out and runs with it. So I would expect Swift's receiving numbers to go up, his running numbers to go up. If you're bringing in a rookie quarterback like Caleb Williams, Swift is exactly the kind of guy you can lean on to be able to dump the ball off to. And I expect that we're going to see a lot of dump offs to Swift next year as well. And that he's somebody that you're able to get in the later rounds who's in a fairly clear spot as the starter. And I say fairly clear, a lot of these are not 100% But they brought him in, they gave him quite a bit of money. And so we expect that they're going to want to get their money's worth out of him and going to play him a lot this year, and that they'll be throwing him the ball. So he'll be able to be out there all three downs. A lot of the backs are going to be, first and second down or third down back. So great point on Swift as far as an underrated pick. And we'll look into the ADP and see where he's going in the draft. I put, by the way, the YouTube link here into the Zoom chat. If you guys are not on the YouTube link, if you're watching us on one of our other broadcast stations, come on over and join us on YouTube. That's where we're going to have the main chat. And we're also going to be keeping an eye on tonight's NBA schedule. We always talk a little bit of basketball, a little bit of football. We tend to alternate what our main focus is. Tonight's main focus is going to be fantasy football, because this is NFL free agency prime time. There's so much happening that we need to cover and we need to get insights in. And but we will be keeping an eye. I've got the Denver-Miami game on here, a rematch of last year's championship. We'll be keeping an eye on that as well. And let's have everyone put in the chat who they are taking in that game tonight, since that is the game of the night. It is underway here. But I'm going to take Denver and the under. And I had already said that before this game started here. So it's not because Miami only had 9 points last time I looked. So let's get our picks into the YouTube chat. Cameron, same question to you. What do you feel is the most underrated or unnoticed or unappreciated move that's happened in free agency?
Yeah, so I'm going to give my take about I feel like when we talk about our big winners in the free agency, a lot of people are talking about the Texans, right? And the Packers. The Packers have made some great signings. But I think no one's really talking about the Steelers. The Steelers got Russell Wilson for a bag of chips, and they added Patrick Queen to that one of the scariest defenses in the league, led by TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward. I'm really excited to see Patrick Queen colliding head of contact with Derrick Henry twice a year. That's going to be, Derrick Henry he's made from the football gods and put down onto the grass. I know he's going to be 30 years old, but that's a big man. And the Ravens offensive line is a lot better than the Titans line. When the Titans, he's scary to stop with a full steam ahead, right? But I'm excited for the Steelers and pretty much that whole division. Russell Wilson, I expect them to add some more pieces to that team, and maybe we can see a nice little playoff run from the Steelers this season.
Yeah, the Steelers definitely got better. I mean, all they were missing last year, really the last 2 years, was a quarterback. Kenny Pickett has been a complete bust. They needed to make a move at quarterback, and they brought in the best guy who's ready to win now, Russell Wilson. And as you mentioned, they also brought over the defensive back from, what'd you say his name was? I already forgot.
It was Patrick Queen, the middle linebacker.
Queen, yeah. I focus more on offense here, but Queen is a good signing. I love when teams when you sign away from your division rival, you weaken them and strengthen yourself at the same time. So it's like gives you double bang for your buck when you're doing that. And Baltimore's lost a lot on defense in free agency this year. That defense is not going to be the same as it was last year. They're going to have to make up with that with Derrick Henry, but I feel like this is the perfect spot for Derrick Henry. Because Lamar runs so much that Henry's, not going to have to, have 30 carries a game. They can use him where they want. They can use him to set up play action. I love that. And if we're looking into, this is one of the most important things to do, is it's not fantasy evaluations that start now are not just about looking at the players that move, but looking at how the other players are impacted by all of this. So, for example, staying with Baltimore and Pittsburgh, I feel like Zay Flowers, very high on him. He already had a great rookie season. He was their go-to guy in the playoffs. That's one of the best places to find your players that are going to step up next year in the regular season, is who are the guys that led the team in the playoffs. Zay Flowers was their go-to guy. Now that they've got Derrick Henry, they're going to be able to play action pass and throw it to Zay Flowers. They didn't bring in any other receivers, so there's nowhere to go but up for Zay Flowers. and his numbers were already decent. He's for sure going in. I've been getting him a lot in the 4th round. If he falls to me in the 5th round, I'm like ecstatic in my fantasy drafts. So
and with the Steelers too, I also expect George Pickens' value to go up in fantasy. He actually has a quarterback to throw him the ball. And another player I want to touch on too is I expect Kyle Pitts to finally have the season.
Well, let's
fantasy
stay here
players.
in Baltimore and Pittsburgh and unpack your first teams you brought up before we move on to Atlanta. As you said, Pickens, I already love Pickens going into last year. Getting a better quarterback should improve his stats significantly. They shipped off Deontay Johnson, so that means more targets. There isn't a clear number 2 in Pittsburgh anymore. So absolutely love Pickens. Been getting a lot of Pickens. His ADP is 61 right now. ADP is average draft position on Underdog. And that means basically the end of the 5th round, beginning of the 6th round. I like him. I've been reaching up to get him a lot. I like him over guys that I traditionally would be taking, like Amari Cooper. Getting older, they brought in Judy. Deshaun's unstable. I'm taking Pickens ahead of that whole class of guys. Even T. Higgins, I like Pickens better than him. We'll go through all the breakdowns and all the picks here. And just to finish on Pittsburgh, I like Najee Harris. I honestly never thought I would say this because he hasn't played great since his rookie year. He had a great rookie year. That was with Big Ben. Big Ben was a experienced quarterback, a mobile quarterback. You like to dump it down to Najee. Najee was great in the passing game. He was top 5 that year, his rookie year. The next 2 years playing with Kenny Pickett, Najee has been terrible. And a lot of it is Najee's fault. I'm not going to put all that on Pickett. He's been injured. They have Jalen Warren, who's been pushing him for split time there. If you look at Warren and Najee's numbers from last year, Najee is at 180, Warren's at 160. I expect it to be the same, where they're both going to, be at that level and go up a notch. Having Russell Wilson come in there, I feel like they're going to lean on the run more. They're going to go to play action more, and the whole efficiency of that whole offense. So both those guys should go up a notch. And I actually like drafting both of them. It's become one of my go-to strategies. They've been on the board pretty late. Jalen Warren is ADP 90, 91 he's fallen to. Najee Harris is 82. So 82, you divide by 12, right? Means he's going the end of the 6th, 7th round. So in the 7th and 8th round, I've been grabbing Najee and Warren. And I absolutely love this move. And this is the type of moves you need to look for in best ball. And we're going to focus in on best ball strategy tonight. If you guys are not familiar with best ball, that's how they do it in these tournaments on Underdog. And so with best ball, there's no free agency. There's no trades. Once you draft your team, that's your team, and you ride with that team for the year. So if your running back gets hurt, you're screwed. Unless you have that running back's backup. But you don't want to waste a roster spot on a guy who's never going to play. You don't want to, take a starting running back. Let me give you an example. Rashid White, right? You don't want to grab on Tampa. You don't want to grab his backup in case Rashid gets hurt, because if he doesn't get hurt, the guy never plays. Rashid's on there 3 downs, all 3 downs, played almost the whole season. So you get like nothing out of that player. So the best situations to look for, one of the best situations and one of the best strategies with best ball is to look for a situation like Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, where they're both fantasy worthy players, and you want to take them both. Because what happens now is if one goes down, the value of the other one shoots way up, and you've protected yourself without wasting a roster spot. And they're both could put up fantasy numbers to score. Remember, in best ball, you're not putting in your lineup. The computer just takes whichever one gets more points. So in real fantasy, you can get screwed in these situations. Like, which one do I start, Jalen or Najee, right? But in best ball, it's great. Whichever one has the big game and gets the touchdowns, it's usually one or the other they're going to go to in the goal line. That's the one the computer puts in for you. So those are the types of situations you want to look at And that's also, it's a very stable situation as well. If you were drafting around this time, take for example, you took Tennessee. A lot of people were high on the running back at Tennessee. Gosh, I got to pull up the list, or I'm drawing a blank on people's names because we're going so far here. But then Tennessee just brought in Tony Pollard. Well, go ahead, Jeremiah.
Tajay Spears.
Tajay Spears, yeah, thanks. So if you were drafting Spears, you just got screwed because they brought in Pollard, right? And we don't know what that timeshare is going to look like there. We know what the situation is. It's a stable situation in Pittsburgh with the running back. So I wanted to cover that strategy in depth. And before we get more into those strategies, that's the type of stuff we're going to be covering today. I want to cover why right now is the best time to be drafting a team in this $2 million tournament. If you wait until closer to the season, everyone will have all the knowledge and people will be picked at different places than they are being picked now. Right now, if you draft, only people that are on the cutting edge even really know what's going on free agency and have really assessed it and talked about it. So you're ahead of those people. Your passion, your staying up to date with this gives you an edge right now. But also, if you are smart enough to look into the draft, and that's a lot of what we're going to be covering on this show, we'll be getting into that in future episodes. And if you can slot in who's most likely to go where in the draft, and avoid players that like Marvin Harrison is a player that's going so high in ADP, but it looks like he's going to go to New England or Arizona. If he goes to New England, you're screwed. You don't want players that are on New England. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be. Jacoby Brissett, that's going to be awful. So you want to look at the whole situation like that, and you're able to do that and speculate right now. And that creates a ton of opportunities for you to draft dream teams. Guys like Trey Benson, for example, in the running back world, the rookie running backs that are out there are going very late in the draft, like 10 or 11th round pick, because nobody really knows much about them yet. I'll tell you, Jonathan Brooks, the Texas running back, if he gets drafted by Dallas, he's going to be a 3rd round pick in a month once the NFL draft happens. Right now, you can get him in the 10th round. And that's how you stack up your team and you win these tournaments. I went through who the winners were from past years and tried to look up some of these people and reached out to them and actually talked to the guy who won first place. And that was one of the main things he said, was that drafting now and drafting a lot of teams now so that you're kind of diversifying your portfolio is how he was able to win this tournament last year. And so there's the window is good. Like up until the NFL draft, you have an advantage because you're speculating where people are going to go. So the window is open then, but right now, right after free agency, there's another smaller window. There are guys that we can get. For example, let me give you some more for examples. Kansas City needs to sign a receiver. They're going to sign a receiver. There's no receivers. They need to bring in a veteran. Who are they going to bring in? So if you can speculate on that with some of your last round picks right now, Curtis Samuel is a guy that is still out there, for example, who nobody else is taking. And in best ball, you draft everyone. It's a 20-round draft, so it goes really deep. And if you get to the end of that draft and you're just taking your players back up because you don't really know what's going on, or if you're just going by last year's stats, or if you're going by ADP, the last thing you want to do is go by ADP. ADP is where everyone else is drafting. And a lot of people lean into that. They just go with ADP. You're not going to win a tournament going with ADP. That actually is a strategy that can work when you're playing with your friends if you lean into ADP, because ADP is telling you where people are going to be drafted. But you're not. That's where it's like picking chalk in March Madness. It's never going to work in the tournament for you to win. And 5,000 people win. I think it's 50,000 people get their money back, and 5,000 people are winning in the prizes. So there's a lot of money that they're dishing out in this tournament. And it's a lot of fun to play. The draft picks go every 30 seconds. It's 12-team leagues. We're going to go through one tonight so you can see what it is and get the feel of it. And we're going to be continuing to break down free agency, break down fantasy strategies, and specifically best ball strategies. And there's lots of other sites you can play best ball on. We'll be talking about those here on the show as well. Another strategy that's really valuable in best ball is inconsistency is actually a good thing. In real fantasy football, this will kill you, right? The Gabe Davis of the world he scores and has 100 yards and then he gets a 0. Mike Evans for years has been like this, up and down, right? I see Jeremiah nodding his head. He must have drafted these guys. Like, I stay away from these guys when I play in my keeper league, my family and friends league. In best ball, that's exactly what you want, because when they have the big game, the computer puts them in. When they have the 0, the computer puts in your other guy, your backup. So those types of players go up in value and are people that you want to look for in this. So that's how that works. I'm going to put, if anybody wants to play along, I'm going to put the link if you need it to. I think, Jeremiah, you said they don't have Underdog in your state, right? And keep in mind that this is Underdog. There's 2 Underdogs. There's the one for sports betting. We didn't have that either, because sports betting is not legal here, but the fantasy is legal here. So see if maybe you're able to use this one and play along. I put that link in there for everyone, and I'll put it in the YouTube chat as well. And I see Alvin has just joined us from over in YouTube. I'll put the link here to join Underdog if anyone is interested, and then I'll put the Zoom link in there as well. And let's just hop over to the Zoom chat, the YouTube chat, and give a shout out to some of our audience. And then I want to get a take from Alvin, who is joining us today. So let's see, Isaiah is over here talking about Puka. Yeah, Puka is a guy who was a steal last year. If you had Puka, you were winning last year for sure. Now, drafting this time of year, there's no way anybody had Puka last year. Even drafting in August, most people missed on Puka. And Puka, let's be real, that's like a once in a lifetime type of thing for a 5th round rookie to have that kind of year. Has never happened before in the NFL. So I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, who's going to be this year's Puka?" Like, there are not Pukas laying around every year. So don't think that that's realistic at all. That being said, rookie wide receivers have done better. It depends what their situation is. Buffalo's likely looking for a receiver. KC's looking for a receiver. Those are great places to look for value in the draft that other people haven't identified yet. But you got to really dig in and look into who are they most likely to be taking, and that's the kind of stuff we'll be covering here. And it's I'm always data and research based, and I'm going to present all the numbers, but I'm also always open-minded. I love hearing people from different perceptions and hearing your take on players. And then we kind of compile, what we think is best, and what one person thinks is better might be something different than what someone else thinks is better. And we welcome and encourage all opinions at all levels. I see Zane has just joined us. Good to see you. Also, Isaiah has hopped up here from YouTube. And so we're going to have a lot of fun together. We come together, we watch the games together during football season. We'll be on watching the games. Sometimes we watch NBA games. March Madness is coming. We're going to have a tournament for that. We did our conference tournaments. That was a lot of fun. We did that last night. And tonight we are talking fantasy football and going over specific best ball strategy. So if I'm going to put that link in the chat again, in case anyone needs to fill out an Underdog account, you've got that link so that you can get signed up with us and do the draft that we're going to do later today. But let's check in with the people that have just joined us. Alvin, great to see you back. I remember you're a Cowboys fan. What are the Cowboys? What are you hearing? What are they doing at running back specifically?
Running back, we're still just looking at, they're doing what they've been doing for the last few years. Even I'm a little dejected. We are a big free agency team. They're going to the draft. I think you were right 2 nights ago. You hit the nail right on the head. We're going to the draft. That's what it looks like the Joneses are doing. They're going to the draft to find their future running backs. Hopefully, the only free agent that's out there that's worth anything in my eyes would be Ezekiel Elliott, to bring him back. We already have $9 million.
Interesting, and I have heard that idea popped around there. What do you, as far as like how was what were the terms that were left on? Was it like, was he bitter that he got cut, or do you feel like he'd be welcomed back by the fans, or what do you think about that?
He would definitely be welcomed back by the fans. And the interesting thing is, they could pitch him. We already owe you $9 million, so we have to pay you regardless. So you can get the $9 million that we were going to pay you, plus come and sign for whatever veteran minimum on a 1 year deal.
But he gets
We
that
might
nine
be able
million
to.
no matter what, right?
Right, we have to pay him the 9 million no matter what. So we can give him a veteran minimum deal plus the 9 million that we were going to pay him, and then put attainable bonus incentives in there where he can reach maybe that $8 million a year that Derrick Henry or somebody got for that year. And whatever he displays in performance and says he got something still left in the tank, then they could talk about extending him, because I know running back at 30 years old is like over the hill, but hey, we got a wide receiver who's really only had 2,000-yard reception seasons in Calvin Ridley at age 29, getting a 4-year, $92 million deal. That just blows my mind.
Yeah, we've been talking on this show. Everything that I'm hearing is Jonathan Brooks. They are all in on him. University of Texas guy, raised in Texas, loves the Cowboys, had the ACL surgery in November, had the surgery at the Cowboys facility with their doctor. So they know him better than anyone else knows him. My main concern is with them not making a move in free agency is that you're kind of tipping your hand in the draft. And that's never a good thing, because now you're at risk for someone jumping ahead of you and taking him. And all the mock drafts, I've been studying a lot of mock drafts. We're going to get into those. They all have him going mid-second round, like not making it to the Cowboys in the second round. So now and especially now that everyone knows this is what they're probably doing, are you going to burn your first round pick on this guy? You might have to. If they really love him, it's worth it to get the guy you want. But everyone's been saying no running backs are going to go in the first round. I've been saying the opposite. I've been saying that Dallas will take they will take Jonathan Brooks in the first round, that they are that much in love with him.
Well, I know this because there's precedent in history. They love Jalen Smith, the linebacker from a few years ago from Notre Dame. Had that terrible ACL injury in the championship game, showed that he was willing to play that year when he didn't have to in that bowl game. And they went and got Jalen Smith, and they were willing to wait a year for him to really come back from that injury. And he did pay dividends those next seasons. And then they went and got Van Der Esch after that. So if they love him, they will pull that trigger in the first round.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think this is like that bad. I don't think this is Willis McGahee territory where he's going to have to sit out a year. The injury was in November. That's plenty of time these days to be back by the season opener. Usually you're not at full strength your first year, so that could bite me in the ass, because I've been taking a lot of him. To get him right now in the 10th or 11th round, I've been taking a lot of. We saw Breece Hall come back and be great. On 1 years. A lot of times before Breece Hall, it has taken 2 years for them to come back. So let's just finish on this topic. Jeremiah, did you have something on the Dallas running back, or?
Yeah, honestly, if they want Brooks so bad, and I don't project him as a first round guy, why not trade back a little bit? Get some more draft capital. Alvin, I'm not sure exactly where y'all draft. Is it 22, right in that range, I assume?
Yeah, and really the only trade bait we really have is Michael Gallup.
We're at 24 right now, Jeremiah.
Or 24. Okay. You could still trade back a little bit, maybe at the end of the first round, grab him. I think 24 is a little too high for any running back in this class.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, Jeremiah. So you wouldn't have to. We're not talking players to give up Alvin, because I don't think anybody wants Gallup unless you guys cut him and he's guaranteed. So you won't do that. But if you could probably get him in the first, like the first 5 picks of the second round, even as well. So you could trade back, pick up some more picks, and still get your guy. My main point is that he's not going to be there by round 24 of the second round, by all the projections that are out there, because there are a lot of teams slated to go for running backs in the second round.
But just the last thing, The reason why in my gut, I don't feel like they're going to go to the first round because of all the holes that they have to fill offensively. They got to fill the hole at wide receiver, second wide receiver. They got to fill a hole at O line with a new tackle because Tyron Smith is going to be gone. They have a lot of holes to fill, and he's talking out of two sides of his mouth saying he's all in for 2024. Well, how? Because it sounds like we start.
Yeah, Jerry Jones you're talking about, right? They haven't done really anything yet. And maybe they have their eyes on some other running back. There's a lot of decent running backs that'll be around third or fourth round if you want to plug those holes. I think there's even more really good receivers out there this year. I would say get your running back early second, get your receiver late second, early third. Maybe you can move out of the first round and pick up 2 picks in the second, and then you could fill both those holes, just like you just said there. I do want to say I still think they absolutely will sign a veteran, and that's another great place to look for value. A guy I've been grabbing in the absolute last round, like nobody is taking this guy in fantasy drafts at all. And these people are like that are playing and paying. These are paid leagues. Granted, it's only $10, but people that are playing this time of year, like this is good competition. I look at who else they're taking to that's where I get a lot of my info. I've done 50 of these drafts now so far this year, and I just started 2 weeks ago. And I watch every draft to see who's going, who's not going. No one else is taking this guy. I love him as my super sleeper. I think Dallas will sign him. Donta Foreman. Foreman was good 2 years ago on Carolina. He was their starter. I think he had like 1,000 yards. Last year, the 2 games he filled in for the Bears, he was productive. I think that he can be the guy that can come in and fill the role and have a veteran there. And there's always a possibility that he could wind up being the starter if something goes wrong with the rookie. It's never a sure thing, when you draft someone. So Donta Foreman is on my list of late round sleeper. Those are the kinds of guys that you need. The problem with Foreman throughout his career is he can't catch the ball. So he's no good on third downs. That hurts him in PPR leagues. That's why he can't really start anywhere. But he's a good, productive power runner that I like late. All right, let's hear from our people that just jumped up on here. We're going to go to Zan next. Zan, so tell us, what do you think is the most underappreciated or unnoticed move that's happened in NFL free agency that really is going to impact things, especially for fantasy? We're talking all offense and fantasy here tonight.
Sure. So I think a move that people have really not picked up and that they should is the Bears signing DeAndre Swift. I think this was a surprise to many. He came from Philadelphia. He obviously has NFC North experience in Detroit, and running back has been a big issue for the Bears for several years. And as we kind of all know, the Bears have not had consistent playoff success of in a number of years. They had to have back-to-back playoff appearances since the mid-2000s. So the Bears feel like they need a spark plug on offense, and they feel like Swift can be the guy to complement whoever the quarterback's going to be. And they obviously have a young receiving core and or a corp rather. And this draft is going to be very, very interesting to see that the Bears end up doing at several key positions, and then of course including the quarterback at number 1. So I think Bears fans were set up for still more of a rebuild, but it's definitely putting the pieces in place, and that's kind of what I would like to see as a fellow, and even as someone who wants to see the Bears get back to prominence again. So
I like that. So Swift, we've got 2 votes for Swift tonight. He's definitely a player whose stock has gone up with where he's landed. We knew he likely would not be back in Philly. And I think if you look at where he is going in the draft, right? This is what's interesting to look at ADPs. And this starts to give you where other players are being picked. So the ADP is average draft position. It's they have so many people that are playing on Underdog every day that they have so much data. I love data driven. Even if you decide not to play on Underdog, you want to at least look at their ADP so that you know where people are being picked. And these are decent players, right? Because these are paid leagues. If you look at ESPN or Yahoo's ADPs, you can't go by those. Every player goes around later in those drafts. And you'll if you do any of those mock drafts, you'll feel like oh my gosh, I'm so good at fantasy. I just got this amazing team. Well, you're playing again. Half those teams are not real, they're computer generated, and half those teams are people, because they're free, that don't know anything about sports. And the other half the people are people like me. I'll pop in there and not take any of the guys I want because I want to see where they're going. And so there's no reliable data on those free sites. The great thing about a pay site is people are not messing around in here. They're putting their best effort in there with who they're taking. Now, that being said, if you're like me and you play a lot of teams, then you might be diversifying your picks, but you're still getting true picks. So let's just look in here as an example of how we would research someone like DeAndre Swift. So we'll look first, let's look who's above him and below him and see who he's comparable to. So, because these are the people that would likely be on the board at that same time as him. And here's how I look at this is this person clearly the go-to guy in the backfield? Brian Robinson was up until signing off Austin Eckler. Now we have no idea how that situation is going to go. So for sure, you cannot invest this type of pick. These guys are going, this is their number, this is where they're going, 94. So that is, you would multiply by 12 or divide that out by 12, right? And so what, 12 times 10 is 70, 82, 94. So it's about the 12th round, right? 12 times 12. No, I did that wrong. 12 times 10 is 120.
Eighth round.
Eighth round. All right, we got some people that are better at math here than me. Awesome. Appreciate it. So eighth round is super valuable pick. Like, you're still picking your starting flex in round 8. You cannot risk a pick on Brian Robinson at this point, knowing what we now know. And I would say this was a pick I was not making last week. He was not on my board at all last week because there was talk out there that Washington wanted to bring somebody in. Now let's look below this. Mostert, 33, huge injury risk. You don't want to take risky picks in best ball, especially because if the player gets hurt, you cannot replace him. You carry that dead weight for the whole season, and that's what drags you down. As your backups start to get hurt, when your other players go on by, or when your star player is out for a week or two and you have zeros, that's where you lose these leagues. You don't really need to outsmart people at the top of these drafts. You just need to pick the guys who won't get hurt, or won't get benched. And of course, nothing's 100% science, but the data can easily tell us that. You got to be ultra conservative in who you're picking. Devontae Williams, Denver did not bring in another running back. So he's a guy who has all the carries there right now. They likely will bring someone else. Chase Brown, they brought in another running back there. Going up here, Joe Mixon is older. James Conner is older. These are guys that are injury potential because they're older. And Connor especially is on Arizona. We don't know what's going to happen with that offense. If they bring in Marvin Harrison, will they become pass happy? We don't, there's just a lot of question marks there. So in comparison here, Swift, as we've had two people point out, represents a lot of value as somebody that you can get here. I had already mentioned Najee Harris from this grouping, who I'm really high on. I would not take Eckler for the same reasons I would not take Robinson. I would not take Chubb. He's coming off an injury. Tyjae Spears I like him a little better, but because he's young. But with Pollard coming in there, that's a whole mess of a situation. I for sure would not take Pollard. You know, the Stevenson situation, you got to downgrade him now since they brought in Gibson. And of course, once you get up to Montgomery, now you're into some pretty solid guys. Although a lot of these players may have questions. So that kind of gives you a breakdown of how you would want to look at this. And what you really want to start looking at, instead of buying into taking somebody here, you want to start looking at Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks. These are the guys that have home run potential if they land in the right situation, and you're able to get them later in the draft. As your bench players. You want bench players with high upside. You don't want to waste picks on these guys, like Chandler. Looks like he's not going to be a starter. Roshan Johnson is here. I actually really like Jerome Ford. If you look at his numbers last year, and I don't think that they're cutting Kareem Hunt for sure. So Ford had 9 touchdowns last year. So I'm very high on Ford for value at that place in the draft there. Zan, did you have a follow-up on Swift?
Well, I was just gonna say, you made a great mention about Chase Brown because when last year he was limited in the amount of carries that he got, considering that Joe Mixon was the lead back there. So given they decided to draft Chase Brown as it is they did for speed and versatility, I think that could help. And he's a running back that I don't think is getting as much credit as he deserves, considering that he's only going into his second year. But he's definitely a sleeper for sure.
Chase Brown. Yeah, see,
Mm.
Chase Brown, if they hadn't signed someone, I would have been all about him. But given the fact that they spent a lot of money to go out and bring in a running back, and let's see where
We
Zach
didn't spend that
Moss.
much. We spent 2 years, $8 million. We didn't spend much on Zach Moss at all. I
Yeah.
agree with Zan 100%. I think Chase Brown is going to be the guy.
Okay.
And before we do our draft, there's a bunch of other rumors here in Cincinnati today that we will get to.
Yeah, for sure. I want to hear those. And Zan brought up Joe Mixon, so I think this is a great place for us to get some insights into him. And because we've got someone from Houston here, so Isaiah can tell us what he's looking forward to. David also just topped up from YouTube on is from Houston, and then we've got someone from Cincinnati, Jeremiah, here, so we can get all these perspectives. Joe Mixon is one of the most underrated fantasy running backs of recent years. It's tempting to think, let's just look at his productivity. And I'm big on data. Now, you certainly don't pick just based on last year's stats at all, but I look at trends in data like any good data analyst would. If we look at Mixon's numbers, 241 last year, 210, 260s before that. And I need to get my reading glasses for those tiny numbers. But I mean, he's had 3 years of steady productivity. I understand this saved Cincinnati a lot of money. What do you think he has left in the tank, Jeremiah? What do you think from a fantasy perspective we're going to see with Mixon having left your Cincinnati Bengals?
I think he's going to have a really good year down in Houston. I think he looks like he's going to be the projected number one back, getting most of the carries. Should be nearly a 3-down back. He had a lot left in the tank. I feel personally for my team, we were spending too much for him. I like the fact that we cut him, being running backs are kind of a dime a dozen nowadays. But I think he's got a lot left in the tank and will be a good fit in Houston.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like to me, there's an incongruency in some of the messages we're hearing from Cincinnati. Is they're saying when it comes to T. Higgins, hey, we're not trading you. We're trying to win the Super Bowl this year. It's not about saving money. But then when it comes to running back, we were saying, Mixon's good, just not worth the money. Either Mixon, and to me, this is a sign like you're not looking to save money. You're looking to, if the other guys you have, if Chase is as good as Mixon,
Yes.
then it's a no-brainer. But if Mixon's still even a step better than Chase, I don't think they cut him like this. I think you restructure his deal and maybe get him in a Tyler Lockett situation. If you guys didn't see that, Tyler Lockett literally gave back money to come back to Seattle because he didn't want to leave. I've never seen a player do that before. All right, let's hop over to our Houston guys. David, what do you expect us to see from Joe Mixon?
Yeah, they were showing his numbers earlier today. His numbers were actually very similar to Saquon Barkley. He's been a workhorse running back since well before Joe Burrow got there. The only thing that really worries me with him is the off-field issues. I know he even just last year alone, he allegedly threatened to shoot somebody. So I mean, we'll see if he can stay on the field. He's done a good job of it most of his career, and then even before he got drafted, he missed an entire year and then dropped out of the first round because that video surfaced of him punching that girl in the mouth. So I think he could be a good running back, but like I said, it really just depends on if he can stay on the field. Jeremiah mentioned him being a 3-down running back. Ideally, I think that would be the way to go, but I can see ourselves still drafting a running back in that 5th or 6th round because Houston likes to divvy up the carries.
Yeah, and in terms of saving the legs and preventing injuries, it's usually a good move to to have somebody that you can mix in there for a few series. I mean, he is 27, so he's still in his prime. It's not like he's, at 29, running backs start to really decline. They fall off the wall. 28 is usually the beginning of the decline. So there should be one more really good year left in Mixon, which makes him a nice player to be looking at where he's being drafted there. Those other guys that are around there have a lot more question backs. There's nobody else in there. We've talked about Dameon Pierce is on some people's sleeper lists, but why he's not a fit for there. Davis gave us some great hometown insights on that. Let's hear from Isaiah. What do you expect from Joe Mixon this year?
He may not even play. We'll see. Right now, he is on no dead here. He's a dead cap hit, like no money on the cap. So the Texans can cut him if they want to. If he ends up having the legal issues or things come out that weren't reportedly there before, it's really no sweat off the Texans. It's a conditional 7th round pick. I think they did a really good job by not letting him hit the open market. So I think he could play. He's the exact type of player that they need, somebody who can either run between the tackles or create his own space. Joe Mixon's a great running back. He's great on catching the ball as well. So I only anticipate him being utilized very often and frequent in the offense. It's just a question of if he plays. I think this was more of a kind of, they didn't want him to go anywhere else if he could play, and he's only a $6 million hit on the cap. He's less than what most running backs signed for anyway on his current deal. So I think from the Texans' perspective, it was just kind of a home run hit if he pans out, and they don't really miss much if he ends up having to be cut. So I really like the move. I think he's going to be a great player. I'm not sure if he'll see the field this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to get your insights and everyone's, if you have some on kind of how that trade went down, because we had kind of heard Mixon was getting cut and then suddenly they were trading him. And whose favor did that really work out to? Because it's interesting hearing Houston's perspective in fantasy football. Like, how many of us have picked up a guy and then turned around and tried to trade him the next week, right? And sometimes that works. And it's like, that's genius. That's how you flip guys and grow your roster in those types of leagues. And I've also had guys where I'm like packaging them up to trade them because there's somebody in free agency I really want to go out and get, right? So on the surface, this looked like, oh, the Bengals were going to cut him, and they were able to like, oh, somebody wants to give us something for him. We'll take that. And the Bengals are geniuses for getting a pick for somebody they were going to cut. But you're giving us Houston's perspective on that is what, Isaiah? How did this work out to Houston's advantage?
So essentially what happens is if Joe Mixon ends up not playing for the Texans, I don't know if it's on the June roster day or if it's on the preseason date that they have to have for the rosters. But if he's not on the roster by then, they don't lose the pick. So essentially the Bengals don't get anything if the Texans don't get anything. So if he sees playing time, if he gets to play on the field this year, the Bengals will get the 7th round pick. But
this isn't like a Russell Wilson type deal where Denver has to pay Russ's salary, even on he's playing for the Steelers now. Is Cincinnati still paying something for Mixon or?
From what I see, he's on the Texans book. He's on the Texans book for $6 million this year. So from what I understand, it was just a clean trade. They gave the pick up for the player, and that goes on the Texans books. It first was reported as an undisclosed draft pick, so I'm not sure they really were sure about what to give up for him, other than that they wanted him. But it came out as a conditional 7th round. So from what it sounds like, it's not much compensation. That's why I don't really see if he'll even play. Especially since he's such a good player and he's so young. Like it's a very bizarre trade.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, very interesting. Love getting these hometown takes in this. All right, so tonight's episode, we want to really dive deep into the quarterbacks in fantasy football. And when you're doing a best ball tournament, especially, you really want to go in already with a strategy of about when you're going to take what type of players, what your roster build is going to look like. You already want to have an idea of this. You definitely don't want to wing it going into one of these drafts. And unless you're just throwing away $10 to practice, but there's no need for that, right? Let's be here, do the work going into this. So you want to have decided in terms of quarterbacking. Now, keep in mind, there's no free agency, and quarterbacks, we all know they score the most points, right? Quarterbacks can get you 20 to 30 points every week. So you do not want to risk having a zero in best ball. And I should mention there's no head-to-head in best ball. It's essentially rotisserie style fantasy, which means the stats just compile. In fact, let's go through the actual rules to this before we get into the quarterbacks, just so everyone is clear on the best ball rules, because we're going to be talking a lot about the strategy specifically for best ball, because that's really all that you can play this time of year. And we want to dissect the rules. Anytime you are you're going to be playing in a league, you really want to look at the rules. Sometimes we think, oh, is it PPR or half PPR? People ask me that all the time, and then but that's not the only rules that are there in fantasy. So let's just look here. By the way, this is what the tournament is called, right? It's the big board. And so when you go into Underdog, it's here under NFL. And they've got in the lobby here is where you can do player props. And then in drafts, we must be in drafts here, right? There's another section here for player props and for drafts. Those are the only two things you can do on here. There's no sports betting. There's no, taking games or over unders. They have player props. And this is why this is legal in most. It's essentially in terms of how they set it up as a business, it's set up as fantasy football and not as gambling, because they don't allow betting on that. So they've got player props just like you would, and then they've got drafts that you can do. Those are the only two things that you can do in here. And they've got different types of drafts where if you want to play for small cash prizes, you can play for as little as $3 on here. But we're going to be focused on here's some of these smaller drafts, and these go for all different amounts. And we're going to be focused on tonight on strategy for this big board tournament. As the season gets closer, they open up other tournaments. This is the one tournament that's on the board right now. It has $2 million prize pot. As you can see, there's already over 220,000 people that have entered here. So there are a lot of numbers to this. There is a lot of strategy that goes into this, and of course, a lot of luck. But you can really hedge the bet. And with over 5,000 people finish in the winnings, you've got really good odds if you follow the stuff we're going to have today, and if you get these insights from different markets like we're getting tonight. So let's go through kind of how the league works. Here it talks about draft size, number of rounds. So it's a 20-round draft. Draft size is number of teams that are in the draft. So it's a 12-team league. There are 20 rounds in the draft, and each pick is 30 seconds per pick. Rake is how much they take off the top, and keep the rest of it goes back into the prize pot. And if they don't get to 2 million, they eat that. They have to put that in because they promised that it will be a $2 million prize pot. So here's a breakdown of how this all works as far as payouts and the money here. And as you can see, top 5,000 is here, wins some sort of money, and then it goes up from there. So the way this works in terms of the tournament is the guys you draft against, those 12 guys. You don't know who they are. They don't let you guys chat because people would just talk shit with each other, and they don't want to deal with those problems or that drama. Remember, there's no free agency, no trading, and putting in your lineup. So this is low maintenance. Once the season starts, you just kind of check in on it and see how you're doing. And so you play against the 12 guys you drafted with for the whole regular season, weeks 1 through 14. It's just the 12 of you. And the top 2 that finish at the end of the regular season then advance to the quarterfinals. So the top 2 from every league that's out there, right? If there winds up being 300,000 leagues. Let's make the math easy. Let's say there's 360,000 leagues. We would divide that by 12. Only Jeremiah could tell us how many leagues that works out to. It doesn't matter. But
3,000.
So 3,000 leagues. So the top 2 from 3,000 leagues would go on to the quarterfinals. You kind of get that. And then the top 2 from there would move on to the semifinals, and then the final 1 from there would move into the championship. Each time you're only competing against a group of 12 people. So that's how this works. So this is their scoring system. It's pretty much what your standard scoring system is these days. The key thing that you want to look at is points per reception. It's half point PPR, which is how pretty much everyone plays except for ESPN is probably the only major site that's on full point PPR, just to be different. You should know that if you're used to playing ESPN, you're not playing by the same rules that the most of the world plays by, and that can make some subtle differences when it comes to these things. This is what the roster looks like. So you start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, and 1 flex. Right, so there's and a tight end, right? Did I say tight end? Yeah. So you're starting 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8 players, and then you have 12 bench players as you start to go in there. Zan, did you have a question about that?
Yeah, so just to clarify, it only runs through the regular season. It doesn't reset for the beginning of the playoffs. Is that right?
Yeah, fantasy football ends when the NFL regular season ends. And most of the time they do not use week 18 or whatever the last week of the season is.
Okay, so then with that being said, that's a slight difference from ESPN then. Is that right?
I'm not an expert in what ESPN does, but I don't think any leagues use week 18.
Okay.
Because week 18, a lot of teams rest their
ESPN
players.
uses week 18. They do for their playoffs, they do
That's what I
2-week
thought.
playoff games.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and of course, you can customize these. The league that I play on ESPN, they rigged it, however they wanted the playoffs to be. The manager
Right, yeah.
whoever the commissioner is can set things. Or if you're playing on public leagues there. So
Right.
yeah, week 18, it's a bad idea to use week 18 because if you had the best players all year and they clinched and rest their guys, you're screwed. So
Right.
standard rules are you do not use week 18. You for sure don't use the NFL playoffs because then all the players aren't playing. They
Right.
have special tournaments just for the NFL playoffs. So good question to kind of clarify that.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're learning the layout here for best ball, and tonight we're going to talk about quarterbacks. And so with 20 spots on your roster, you got a lot of bench. But what you really want to do in best ball, this is a thing new people will go wrong in, is you really want to stack up on wide receivers, and because a wide receiver in any given week can have an amazing game for you. And then they might have zeros the whole rest of the year, but they can literally win your league for you in best ball if they have that blowout week. I'll give you some examples of guys that did this last year. If you guys, remember last year, and these are guys you would not want to take in normal fantasy football. And even here, they're guys you don't want to take until the last round, but you don't want to wind up with a balanced account. I'll tell you, a guy who was really had some really explosive games last year and was drafted really late last year is Jacoby Myers. As an example, Jacoby Myers had like 3 games where he scored 20 points, and then the rest of his season for the Raiders was completely mediocre. If you look at his stats for the year, he's decent, below average, veteran, but he's the kind of guy that's a home run in best ball. Another example, I'm scrolling through the list here just to try to find some examples of these guys to show you. There were a couple weeks on New England, if you guys remember last year, Kendrick Bourne went nuts. Like this guy had 2 huge 20-point games. And if somebody happened to have him on those weeks, they won those weeks. So you want to wind up with lots of receivers. You want to, of your 20-man roster, you typically want to have 10 receivers. You don't want to risk zeros. And so at quarterback, I like to have 3 quarterbacks for sure. If I think one of my quarterbacks is injury prone, or if my quarterback room is weaker, I'll add in a 4th one. And a lot of times you can make up because you just need your guy to have a big game. And so whereas at Josh Allen, every week he gets 30 points, you can kind of piece that together by having 2 or 3 or 4 guys that are average at quarterbacking, and kind of, because you don't have to play the matchups. In regular fantasy, you'd have to pick, and that's where you get kind of screwed. Like, you pick the wrong one, you wind up with somebody on your bench and you're kicking yourself. In best ball, the computer just puts in the best one. So taking a lot, waiting, what you really want to do is wait on, for sure you want to have an idea of, I'm going to either wait on my quarterback or wait on my tight end. Tight end is another spot where you can grab early, or if you wait and grab 4 of them, like if you get guys like Hunter Henry and Dawson Knox, like they knock in like 4 touchdowns a year. But if you have 3 of them, you got 12 touchdowns. You're scoring almost every week from your tight end, and you can grab those guys with late round picks in best ball. So I'm kind of giving an overview of some of the strategies as we dive in and start to look at quarterbacks. Now, overall, in quarterback, in all fantasy football, no matter where you play, quarterback is often considered a position you want to wait on and draft in the later rounds. Often, even drafting them after you've finished all the rest of your starting lineup and even started to take some bench players. And let's just do kind of an informal poll here. In general, in drafting fantasy football, would you say that if you look back over the years you've been playing, that you tend to take a quarterback, would you say in the first 5 rounds, or do you tend to wait past round 5 to take a quarterback? Let's just kind of go around the horn here. Isaiah, when do you usually take your quarterback? First 5 rounds or next 5 rounds?
So I decided this year I was going to change things up. I usually don't have success in fantasy. It hasn't been my forte the last few years. And I usually take quarterbacks pretty high. So like usually in the 3rd or 4th round, especially if I get last and it's a snake draft. Sometimes like if Mahomes is projected to have an MVP year, or like this last year, I didn't take any quarterbacks high just for that reason. I've been burned in the past. I've just learned it's better to take skill positions. This last year, I took a different approach, and I actually really enjoyed it, and I think I'll do it again. I drafted Daniel Jones and Tua, like really, really, really late. I got Tua in like the 10th round, and I think I took Daniel Jones, maybe even off the waiver, but I just kind of did like a dual quarterback, kind of made my quarterback.
That's the best practice. That's how almost everybody who plays fantasy football that knows what they're doing plays. Is to wait on a quarterback, and that's what I'm going to wind up recommending is too. But I'm just curious to hear other people's takes, and really, just to keep us on track time wise, because we're already at 9. I just want a kind of a 1-sentence answer from. I'd like to hear from everybody. So Jeremiah, first 5 or last 5? When do you usually take
last 5 for sure?
Last 5 for sure. Okay, Zan, when do you usually take your quarterback? First 5 or last 5?
First 5 for sure.
First 5 for sure. Okay. Alvin, when do you usually take your quarterback?
Yeah, I'm going to take my QB1 in the first 5.
In the first 5 rounds. Okay. All right. So let's look into the data and see when that makes sense, or even if that makes sense. And I'm open to considering all data points here. This is one of the things that we're going to do in this is we're going to talk through all the pluses and minuses on each player. We're going to look at their numbers last year. And then we're going to conclude based on the pluses and minuses, do we think his numbers are going to go up or down from last year? And then we'll give them a number. And this way we have numbers to where we're assigning players. And this allows you to compare players across positions. Like I'll show you, even though the ceiling on the floor rather on a quarterback is a lot higher. So you have to adjust for that. That's easy to adjust. You just subtract out the lowest number. And I'll show you how to do that. But you want to have data. What you for sure don't want to be doing is just going, I'm going to take him. Like I just feel it. I just think he's going to have a good year this year. Like that's not acceptable as far as giving an opinion on the show. And really as far as life goes, like you shouldn't pick your wife that you marry because like you just kind of have a feeling she's the one, like that's how you wind up dating a narcissist who's crazy. You got to actually, see, is this person have the same values as me, the same interests? Like, do we get along? How do we communicate? What's it like when I fight with this person? these, and those are all the things we want to consider. And it's by no means is there an exact science to this. It's subjective, but have some reasons for it. If you're making arbitrary decisions in fantasy football, really in life, that is not a way to have the best possible odds at success. Everything is odds at success. We want to stack the deck for the odds to go in our favor. And there are some times when it makes sense to take a quarterback early if one falls into your lap and it's a tremendous value. That would be the time to get one. So let's look at the numbers here. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see this better. And so what I pulled up here are these are from Half Point PPR. So this is right from Yahoo. And here is the rank, how the quarterbacks finished last year. And this is their fantasy points total for last year. And and then I've got subsequent years on here as well. So one of the things that we want to let's start from the top down in our analysis of this. So Josh Allen last year was number one. And if we look across the board, the last 3 years, he's always been above 400. A score of 300 is what you want in your fantasy starting quarterback. If you're below 300, you picked a guy who's underperforming for the year. And that's why last year, Pat Mahomes was considered the number one bust in fantasy football last year. In fact, the number two bust was Kelsey. They brought each other down hand in hand last year. They were the top worst busts. If you took Pat Mahomes in the top 5 rounds last year, which there was every reason to do it, it just didn't work out. And he just had a bad year. It seemed like they were playing more defense. His game was off. Kelsey was hurt. His receivers sucked. There was those drop balls and calls. A lot of things just kept happening to go into that. But it can happen, and it can happen with any pick. So, but Josh Allen has been very steady across the top here every year over 400, and that's in big part because he runs the ball so much. And consistency is a big thing of what I look at. I would contrast that to Lamar Jackson, who this year won the league MVP. In real life, he was the MVP of all of football based on his team's record. He deserved to be the MVP, but he did not have a great fantasy season at 338. That put him at number 4. And the 2 years previously, he did not have a qualifying score. He was hurt. The ones in this light green here, that means they didn't play 50% of the season or more. And so they don't have a number. They were hurt. So I look at consistency here. Remember, you don't want to risk getting a 0, especially in best ball. If you're playing in in another league, you can just grab somebody, or you can make a trade for somebody, or you can pick up even his backup when he fills in. You do not want to have your star players be out for the year, or really have them be out at all if you can help it. And Josh Allen hasn't even missed a game. So he's probably the consensus number 1 going into next year. But what we're going to do here is kind of fill in some things as far as pluses and minuses for Josh Allen. So let's go around the horn here. What does anyone have a take on Josh Allen as far as how his situation has changed? And we want to note any change is worth noting. And sometimes we don't know if it's positive or negative yet, but it's a change. If there's a change in coordinator, for example, that's a risk variable. We want to put that out on the table in our sheet and consider. That means it's not for sure that things are going to be the same as they were last year, because this is a change. So we're going to identify the changes for the quarterback, and then we'll use those to rescore. And you can take all the same information and data and use this to project how you want. But what I want you to do is put a number there so that you have real numbers to where you're going to draft a quarterback. So let's start with Josh Allen here. Jeremiah, what do you think has changed with Josh Allen's stats? And just give us one thing so that everyone can get to give one thing here.
Well, the first thing is I think they're going to run the ball a lot more year with Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator. I don't think he'll get the opportunities to throw as much.
Okay, so that's a good
run the ball himself.
Yeah, that's a good starting point here. So Joe Brady took over the second half of last year. The team ran the ball a lot more last year. I mean, Allen still was there with Brady last year, still got his points because he ran the ball more last year. And but clearly they focused to run more. Diggs was horrible in the second half of last year.
Yes, he was. I traded for him.
Isaiah, what else is a new variable in the Buffalo team?
I think their run game with James Cook is a lot different than when they had Zach Moss or Devin Singletary. James Cook is a little bit better at catching the ball. I think that will improve a lot more, like Jeremiah Senator Joe Brady. We saw that a lot under Brian Dable during his MVP season. Just his ability to get the ball out quicker rather than take those shots down the field. Just make the safer play. I think we'll see that more under Joe Brady as well, especially having James Cook and that weapon
Yeah,
available.
well, yeah, I mean, Cook's already been there for a year, so we've already seen reflected in this number is already what it's like with Cook compared to what it was like with Singletary and Zach Moss back there. But so are you saying that you expect to see James Cook develop even more into a runner? If he develops into a pass receiver, that's good for Josh Allen.
Yeah, well, I think it just more of the dual threat at that position will allow him to not make those shots down the field that he seems to take on like those hero ball plays.
Right.
I think just creating that trust in James Cook and knowing that he has that option available to him. As where last year and the year past, I don't think he's had that comfortability. I think it's just making him comfortable in his own offense again. And I think Joe Brady's going to do a good job of that.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so cool. Those are some good points. Alvin, anything new? We've kind of talked about Joe Brady twice now. Anything new to add that's changed with Buffalo?
Yeah, so one of the new things is the actual change of the referees recognizing that when a quarterback tucks the ball to run, he will now be a running back, and there's not going to be all these protections unless he totally is committed to the slide. If he's not committed to the slide, Allen is one hit away from being like a Cam Newton and having an injury that could potentially put him out on the season. And for a lot of people grabbing him number one, if he has to play that hero ball and he has to tuck and run, please believe that safeties and linebackers are looking to really put real pops on him.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. It's something that, I hadn't considered yet. That's why it's so great to introduce all of these things into the conversation here. Go ahead, David. What's your thoughts on Josh Allen? What is something that's changed that could make it go up or down, his numbers?
Yeah, so for sure. So the big thing that I don't think I heard anybody mention was all the cap casualties on the defensive side of the ball. Now it's a fluctuating situation depending what they do in the draft, but by virtue of their defense getting worse, they're more likely to give up more scoring, and the offense is going to have to throw a lot more. So I think that works to if you're a Josh Allen fantasy owner, that works to your advantage.
Yeah, the defense looks to be worse this year, and I think overall the team, a lot of people are saying they think their window is closing, that the team looks to be worse. They're in kind of cap hell. They lost Gabe Davis. That would be a weapon. It's some debate if he was very good as a weapon, but it is a change, right? We want to note any possible changes here. I would say, if I was continuing to look at this, last year they talked a lot about wanting him to run less. They brought in a goal line back. I was really looking to see, were they going to sign a goal line back this year? They still might. Josh Allen just seems like it's in his nature to run, so he's not going to not run. I mean, and he's big, he can pop people, but also if he's running around a lot, that is pretty risky, although he's been doing that his whole career and literally hasn't missed a game yet. Favre was able to get through his whole career, like that. And that's kind of the closest guy that this reminds me to. So you got Gabe Davis there. I would even look into things. To me, Diggs is getting older. He seems a little bit unhappy there at times. You've got Kincaid, I think, is developing into a really nice possession receiver for them. Somebody that can move the chains is what they need. If Kincaid gets better, that's good for them. I think they're going to draft a receiver as well, although they do need to draft a lot on defense as well. So overall, then, if we're going to look at these are the variables that have changed. It's not anything major, but overall, I would say there's a net negative risk, in my opinion, in my assessment of this. I'm open to someone sees it differently, wants to put that in. So if there's a net negative risk there, that means that he's going to be down from this number somewhat. The range that someone might fall down is typically 5 to 10%, right? And so what's really interesting about this is, let's suppose he does fall off 10%. That would be a lot. That still puts him at 371, I think, 370, maybe 369, which pretty much,
369.
yeah, pretty much. Glad we got our math major expert here. It's going to come in handy today while we're doing all these numbers. That still puts him historically in the top 5. So he's still a good pick. So he's very. It's a rare case where I would say a quarterback would still be a valued pick, even with an adjustment down. And of course, he's got a ceiling. He's got a proven record that he could go as high as here. I don't like to adjust players up very much unless they've been up before in their career, because there's just no proof. And if you're speculating, if you just think, oh, Drake London's due for a breakout, Kyle Pitts, Cameron wanted to talk about, is just due for a breakout this year. If it's not there, you're really, really reaching with what you're speculating for. And there's other safer, better picks that have that you can build around, where you don't have to take those kinds of risks, because you can't just, if you took Kyle Pitts in a regular lead, you could just pick up a free agent. That you're not going to be able to do that later on. So still very good there. So that's an example of how we would break down these quarterbacks, and we're going to go more into these. I don't know if we won't have time to get through all of them here tonight. But the other thing I wanted to point out in the quarterbacks is, traditionally there is a top 4 or 5 that finish pretty clearly above the others. If we look back to 2022 quarterbacks, let's just go over here. In 2022, as we see, there was a top 4 that had 360 or above, and then there was a drop, a 50-point drop down to the pack here. So 4 guys that were in the top there, all really good 4. And notice, if we look at this year's top 5, only 2 were back from the top segment from last year. Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts were all that were back. And so, and that's generally how it goes in quarterbacking, is that 50% of the guys that were in the top 4 or 5 don't return to the top 4 or 5 the next year for whatever reason, whether it's an injury, whether it's a change, whether it's like Mahomes just having a bad year. So the first thing you should want to be thinking about in your own mind of locking out, the last thing you want to do is fixate on any one of these players, because if a great value falls to you, you got to be willing to take it. And most players fall where they're supposed to fall, or within a round of that. And so that can impact your draft. But you want to have in your mind, who am I predicting as my top 5 going into next year, and who might fall out of this. And knowing that it's 50-50 that your player is not going to finish in the top 5 is actually the number one reason you should not take a quarterback early. And the data shows that the odds are that the players from last year are not going to repeat again this year. And so if that's the case, like in any other position, it's generally, it doesn't have those big drop-offs, and it's incremental drop-offs, not with the quarterback. And that's one of the biggest reasons, is you have a 50% chance that your player is gonna fall out of the top 5. So you want to be thinking about who is your top 5. And then I want you to notice this. This is the reason why it makes sense to wait on your quarterback in almost all cases, unless one of these people just falls to you at a place where they're an extreme value. But if you look here, from number 6 to number 13, there's only a 30-point difference, right? There's 17 games in a season. So 17 times 2 is 34. It's less. Yeah, so if it was a 34-point gap, it would mean there's a 2-point difference between number 6 and number 13. And that's if you guess it right. You may not guess it right. So the odds are your guy's going to finish somewhere in here anyways, and there's no difference between this. And historically, it's always like this, where 6 through about 14, sometimes even 6 through 15, don't have that big a gap. And these guys that are here are typically guys that you can get in round 10. And so when in best ball, especially, it makes sense to stack these guys, to grab some of these guys that are to wait and grab a quarterback. Maybe not wait too late, but for sure you don't want to be taking a quarterback in your first 5 rounds, unless Josh Allen falls to you in round 3, unless Jalen Hurts falls to you in round 5. If you don't believe in Dak, if you think he's going to fall out, then you wouldn't even want to take him in rounds 5. You want to wait and get more of these guys, especially since you don't have to pick which one to put in. The computer's going to pick for you. The odds are that 2 people from here are going to outperform 1 person around here, unless you happen to guess right and get one of the top ones. That would be the only way that you could make it all the way there. So that being said, we're going to go through this exercise on each of these quarterbacks here and assess what their numbers are, give them a new number, re-rank things, and see where they are. So let's talk next about Jalen Hurts. So who could give us one thing that's changed with Jalen Hurts? Let's go to Jeremiah.
Jason Kelce retiring, the end of the tush push, the success rate of the tush push anyways. I don't feel it's going to be near 100%.
Okay. Yeah, regardless of how it might impact the tush push, and we're not here to debate that today. That could be a whole episode. But clearly the O-line will not be as good as it was when Kelce was there. And that's part of
Absolutely.
that is a variable that's changed. All right, David?
Yeah, he's got Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator now, so it's not going to be the same old that they've been running. I think they're going to light up the scoreboard.
New OC, Kellen Moore, more of an offensive-minded coach. From what David's saying, I'll to be honest, I haven't looked into Kellen Moore enough to know what his style is. I think Jalen Hurts, though, has his style of how he plays, and a great OC adapts to whatever his player might be. Barkley is another offensive weapon that should cut into everyone's scores. If we're cutting up the pie of how much Philadelphia scores, I think those are the 3 big things there. So we've got Barkley coming, could lower his numbers. We've got a new offensive coordinator. To me, that's might increase his numbers. It's a little bit less known than Barkley. It's pretty much a given to me that Barkley will lower the numbers. The O-line will lower the numbers. So overall, unless anybody has anything else on Hurts, I mean, he is coming back. Supposedly he was hurt last year. It was really a bad year for everyone's on him. Like I've even heard some people say they should look to move on from him. But in terms of fantasy, he was still by far the number 2 last year. And the year before he was number 2 as well. So there's a good track record here. He's young. He doesn't seem to miss games. There's a lot to like in Jalen Hurts here. I think his Devontae Smith is developing, getting better. What do you think, Alvin? Is there another thing that's changed?
Yeah, so even though he did finish as a top 2 fantasy quarterback, there are some little red flags to be concerned with. His passer rating dropped nearly 20 points, and his passing efficiency dropped as well. So he had a lot of little categories that dropped, and losing Kelce as his main guy up front, who made a lot of adjustments on that line. His completion percentage also dropped. So
and all those numbers are not relevant in fantasy. And so for this conversation, those are things you don't want to let that distract you from him. Because if you don't take him, if he falls to you in the right spot and you don't take him because of those reasons, you just lost your league to somebody else who does take him. We need to be able to see through to the stats that do matter for fantasy.
But if you're not accurate if your accuracy is going down, that means that you're going to throw more picks. So picks do count against you.
Yeah, but that's all already reflected in this 371. He already went through having all those numbers be down, and it brought him down from 384 to 371. Everyone agrees this was a down year for Hurts, but the numbers don't lie. In fantasy, he was still the number 2 quarterback by far, like light years ahead of people like Mahomes and Tua, who were not even close to him. CJ Stroud, CJ Stroud is 100 points behind Jalen Hurts. So anybody who's considering drafting CJ Stroud anywhere near Jalen Hurts, the data doesn't show why that is. Obviously, we got to look at, are these players going to increase and get better, or are they going to fall off? And I think we're making a case here that Hurts's numbers could decline slightly again. Cameron, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with what Alvin said. I mean, yeah, Hurts was definitely a top 2 quarterback like the first 10 weeks of the season last season, but then it all fell off. It really fell off a cliff in that second half of the season. It's really hard to ignore the tape. And Philly's got some problems. It all starts up with the coaching tree. And let's not forget, too, that A.J. Brown was getting real frustrated with Jalen Hurts towards the second end of that, or towards the second half of the season. So I actually probably stay away from Hurts. I expect him to have another down year, especially with he got a lot of the rushing touchdowns. I love the point that Jeremiah made about Kelsey not being there anymore.
Yeah, so I see. To me, what you just said is exactly what you want to be able to catch yourself. And you're going with your feel. You're going with your eye. You're going with their win record. You're going with what the media is saying. If we actually look under the hood at the data, he had 3 awesome games in the month of December. And look at, he had 6 out of 7 games were here. This last game, I forget if he didn't play the last game. Or I think they were getting killed by the Giants, right? So we said we don't even use week 18 in fantasy, but if you look at the data, it's not there for fantasy. Everything you guys are saying about this decline, it's not there in the data. It's already reflected in the numbers. And if you're picking based on gut feel and overall vibe, the data doesn't lie. So that's what I'm hoping to open your mind up to today. Again, it's you can pick based on just your own whims of what you want to pick on, and you can pick based on efficiency stats or other things, but that's not data. That's not and we can say we're just playing this to have fun, but if you're playing this to win the $2 million, the data is your best odds. It's like you're trying to tell me that you have a 16 against the dealer has an 8, and you're like, I just feel it. I'm going to get a 5. And I'm, and I think we all know if you play blackjack, like if you hit on a 5 against, a break card the dealer has, like the table's going to look at you like you're crazy. The data doesn't lie. It's the same effects here, is being able to trust the data and to relinquish kind of the eye test of fantasy football.
So what about you don't think his carries in the red zone? Because he typically would run the ball in the red zone. Do you think his carries will go down in the red zone now that they have Saquon?
I think the opposite. I think Saquon's carries will, for sure, goal line carries, they're going to the tush push still until they see if it doesn't work. Right? I feel I would not draft Saquon at all. I'm shocked at how many people are now saying that Saquon stock went up. I've heard people, the owner of Underdog is literally in his video saying that he thinks Saquon is the number 2 overall running back like now. And I'm like, you're crazy. I see the opposite going on for Saquon is his carries are going to be down. Hurts does not throw the ball to running backs. He did not throw the ball to Swift. Swift was an amazing receiver. And Hurts did not throw the ball to him. Maybe this offensive coordinator could change that. That's a huge risk variable. So I think if you don't use Barkley as a receiver, like you're losing half of what Barkley is. So Barkley's going to lose his goal line touches. He's going to lose his receptions. He's already injury prone. He hasn't played a full year since his opening season. And the Giants, when he did play, he was a one-man show. His usage was off the charts. Now this team is going to be a very balanced attack. So in terms of fantasy, I look for Barkley to go way down. Hurts, across the board though, by it's a pie. It's always a pie. And so by Barkley coming in, it cuts into Hurts's, it cuts into AJ Brown's numbers. You need to knock them down a few notches as well. All right, Jeremiah, go ahead.
Yeah, I won't go as far as saying Barkley's going to be the number 2 back, but I think he's going to have a huge upgrade. Barkley has 49 touchdowns and 7,000 yards in his career with the Giants, where every team put 9 people in the box. They never had no one to throw to. I think you have an AJ and Devontae Smith, it's going to open things up. He's going to have the best season of his career with less touches. I agree with you there. He won't get the touches, but he's going to get more production in the limited touches.
Yeah, I think that I would agree he's going to be more productive with less touches. I just think he's going to lose everything in the passing game. And that is what will really, and he's going to lose the goal line carries. But in terms of his, but between the 30 to 30, he's going to have the best running lanes he's ever had. So Jeremiah does make a good point about that. So overall, I mean, let's suppose we bump Hurts down significantly. I said literally we shouldn't never bump someone down more than 10%. But you guys seem to want to bump him down even more. So let's suppose we bump him down 20%. Jeremiah, what's the 20% of 371 bring his new score down to?
74.
No, so we must want
297.
297. Okay, so if that's where you guys feel he is, then you still have to slot him in there as a 297, right? That would still put him in last year's numbers here, top 8. But maybe that means you just don't want to take him in the first 5 rounds. And I'm okay with that. To me, I'm not taking Jalen Hurts. Before Barkley, I had him as a late 3rd round pick grade. Now I have him as a 4th round pick grade. If he comes to me in the 4th round, I have him probably 20 points higher than this. I have him not going down as far as you guys do. But you have to be able to recognize where he might fall. And even if he does fall off significantly, the value that's still going to be there. All right, let's do Dak next. And then we're going to kick into a draft. If anybody wants to play along, we're going to do one. I think it'll be fun to see how this unfolds. But let's talk about Dak next. So as far as changes to Dallas for Dak, does anybody have anything come to mind? All right, Jeremiah.
I think Jake Ferguson's really going to step up in his second year. He made big leaps and bounds throughout the season. I don't know what they're going to do at number 2 receiver. Maybe Alvin can speak to that, being that's his team. Because Brandon Cooks was not the answer. We all thought he was. I drafted him higher than I should have last year in fantasy. I got fooled. But we don't know what they're going to do at second receiver. And I definitely think Jake Ferguson's going to be big help.
So Ferguson developing. Okay, I like that. Go ahead, Alvin.
So typically I would pull the trigger on Dak if I had the opportunity to draft him in fantasy.
At this point, all I want at this point is identify what's changed plus or minus with Dak. We're going to identify all the changes, and then we're going to determine if we think his number is going to go up or down or stay the same from where it was last.
Right. That's what I was just setting that up as the caveat.
Oh, okay.
Just explain, because of the changes of all the unknowns of not having that primary 3rd receiver, because right now we're just dealing with Tolbert, Cook, and CeeDee Lamb. He could probably still get it done. And also not knowing who's going to be in his running back room, who's going to be up front as your starting center, because we don't have a center right now. All these different variables, I would think you would have to move him down a few slots currently until we can figure out these unknown variables. But yeah, that's my take on that right now.
Okay, sounds good. And obviously, for example, if Derrick Henry had signed, we now know they have a goal line back. That's going to cut into Ferguson's touchdowns. That's going to cut into Dak's touchdown. We would adjust Dak down if Derrick Henry had signed. Derrick Henry not signing is good for Dak. But you make a lot of good points that are things I hadn't even considered these as negatives, and especially hearing that from a Cowboys fan. That's why it's good to get all the information from all of this, because I look at am still looking at not much having changed from Dak from my point of view. The second receiver sucked last year, so whoever they bring in, if they suck again, you're the same as last year. The running game sucked last year. And so if if it sucks again, you're right back where you were last year, right? These things could get better. The offensive line I'm not as familiar with, so I really appreciate you pointing out that there's some question marks around there, and just overall question marks around things are question marks around things, right? So I've been drafting Dak pretty high, saying that not a whole lot has changed. CeeDee Lamb is young, Dak is young, so there's less likely to have injuries there than there are with older players or players that have significant history of injuries like Lamar Jackson. So I don't see Dak going down more than, say, 5%. It really, all he has is some question marks. There's not any real negatives. And even if those question marks turn out to be bad moves, they were bad moves last year, and you're right back where you started, in my opinion. And Dak and CeeDee Lamb had a ton of chemistry and put up big numbers, just like, you know, Rodgers and Devontae Adams did when those guys were sucking there. And those things could all get better. So if we move Dak, Jeremiah, let's move Dak down 5%. What does that put his 351? So we would want to do 0.95 times 351.
He would still be in that
17
top
points.
5.
17, 18 points.
So what would the new total be?
334, 334.
21. He would still be in that top 6 range.
Yeah, and by the way, another thing I like, Dak had a 330 year in 2021. So there's some precedent here for his numbers to stay up there in the top 5. And Dak, in terms of ADP, if we hop over to where players are going, this is why I think it'll be fun for you guys to see a draft unfold here. Dak,
I got him finishing worse at 10th. 10th position.
Yeah, so his ADP, this is where the public, the order they're drafting quarterbacks in. Richardson, to me, is high risk, high reward. CJ Stroud, people I think are just hyping him. You know, he had a great year, but his fantasy year wasn't great. Dak is going here at 77. So if we divide that by 12, what's that? 6 times 12 is 72. So he's going middle of the 7th round. I mean, to me, you're getting a quarterback who has a pretty good chance of being in the top 5 again. He's been there 2 of the last 3 years. Not a lot of negative changes, not a lot of injury risks in the 7th round or even 6th round. I love Dak Prescott right there. I think that's when I've been taking him and would likely look to take him. And so, yeah, this gives you an idea of how we want to use the numbers to draft, to go through these. All right. Did anyone want to jump in? Does anybody have an underdog and wants to do a draft along with us? Otherwise, we can just kind of focus in on the team that I'll pick, and we can talk through who's on the board. I'll ask you guys, you know, who is it that you like and want to take? Let's hop over to.
I'm kind of interested to look at the team that we're going to pick, Greg. To be honest with you, considering that you probably know more about underdog than almost all of us on this call. So.
Yeah. Well, and considering I've drafted 50 teams already. So, and I, each time, not only do I do the draft, but I study who else is everyone else taking in the draft. Where are they taking them? Why are they maybe making those picks? You know, this is right. This is what I do since, and it's a lot of fun doing it. So I'm excited to look into the hood here. Let's hop over to our YouTube chat and just see, what we, have here. And let's have you guys put into the YouTube chat. Remember, we need everyone to be on the YouTube chat. Everyone who's here on Zoom, if you need this link, I'll go ahead and put it in there. And let's have you come over to the YouTube chat and put in here. If we get the number 3 pick, who do you want us to take? Who would you vote for us to take the number 3 pick? And I'm going with C-Mac and CeeDee Lamb are the consensus 1 and 2. Which they are in, you know, in underdog. And I think just seeing the ADP will be really interesting for you guys if you haven't seen where other people are drafting there. All right, so I'm going to hop in that league, and let's just see what you guys are going. So we have Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry. Let's look at his ADP and see here. CeeDee Lamb if he falls, yeah. Tyreek, Jamar. Yeah, obviously our Cincinnati people are going to be biased here. So this is the ADP overall, right? Actually, let's do a quick run through this so that you guys can see what to expect when we get there. So again, this is thousands of people having drafted. So there's so much data that's driving this. And so if you're thinking of something that's way off, like usually that's a sign you're off track. Way off, right? Now, and way off like 20 points is not crazy. Especially when you get to the later rounds. 20 points might be too high early on. But if so Derrick Henry is an example. Right. I mean, I think Derrick Henry is going to be amazing in Baltimore. And keep in mind, the data is not the data. A lot of the data was before he signed with Baltimore, but Derrick Henry can be got down here at, where are we? Right. 54. Right. So 54 divided by 12. What's that? 12 times 4 is 48.
Fifth round.
So fifth round. Derrick Henry is a fifth round player based on where he's going. Now, again, I expect that to go up. I expect Jacobs to go up. Jacobs, I like his new situation. So let's do a quick skim through this just to give you some idea of how things are going to go, and then we'll talk our way through as the picks go. So CMAC has been going 1. And you can see when a player's a second digit is over a 5, like if a player, let's try to find one here. So Bijan is 6.8. That means it's just as often he goes 7th as he goes 6th, right? If the number's over a 0.5, it means you would round back to kind of get an idea of where he would want to go. So again, my main overall philosophy with this is to look for low risk players. So that means young players. Like I kind of like Amon St. Brown more than Tyreek Hill. They're to me, their numbers are comparable. And he's younger. And his quarterback situation is pretty stable. Tua, has had concussion problems in the past. So that gives you an idea of just my overall philosophy, but that's a very specific to this platform philosophy. All right, so this gives you kind of an idea of where things are going to go. Puka's only had one good year. I would not risk my whole team on a player who had one good year. We've seen plenty of players who've had one good year, been one and dones, whether it's from injury or from whatever it might be. This kind of gives you an idea. I'm staying away from Jonathan Taylor. I don't like Anthony Richardson in there running, getting a lot of his touchdowns that he used to get. And Taylor was injured a lot the year before this last year. So I'm staying away from him. I'm staying away from Saquon, staying away from Devon Achane for sure. Super risky pick in this type of format. Harrison is going way too high here. I stay away from rookies in this format. We don't, if he goes to the Patriots, you just, wasted your pick there on him. He's going to be terrible. You can see about where Josh Allen is going. I like to wait on quarterback. These guys are all solid. Rashee Rice, I think, is overrated in terms of fantasy. I don't see Rashee Rice, his numbers getting a lot better than they are now. I think that will be spreading the ball around there a lot. I like to get a tight end, one of these top tight ends if I can, Laporta or Kelsey. If I don't get one of them, I'll typically wait. And you want to build receivers here. In this, it's once you get to about round 6, there's no receivers left. On this site, we call it the wide receiver dead zone. And when you get to the dead zone, there's nothing left but mediocre receivers, and you don't want to have to start any of them. And there's still good running backs on the board in round 6, 7, and 8. So typically that's when I'm going for running backs. So that gives you kind of an overview of how this is going to go. So let's hop over here and just go through the sign-up process. You can see I put in here what my budget is for the week for myself. I've got $50 left to play. You click the enter button. And we're in, and now you got to wait for the league to fill up. And let's see. Sometimes you catch it where you're the first one. Sometimes, boom, like those many people just came in here. All right, so we have 6th pick overall. So I'm going to start the queue up here, and I always like to use this queue and would recommend you do that because you get 30 seconds. It goes by fast in these. So I'm going to start to queue this up in terms of how I rank these guys, just to keep it simple. Since we're live here, I'll keep this pretty chalk in here. I don't like going running back there. You know, I love St. Brown. I like AJ Brown here. So that's my top 7. And after that, I'll start to go running back. I put them in order of least injury risk. Breece Hall, of course, had a big injury. So I put him 3rd in that grouping. So that's my top 10 right here. It's telling me how many people I have in the queue. I'm kind of estimating I'm at 6 here. And that, you know, it's going to come back around to me. The nice thing with 6 is it comes back to me every 12, right? So I'm going to start just putting people in the queue based on how I would rank them. And you can also pre-rank your players before you even get here. So if, you know, this might be stressful for someone that hasn't done it a million times like me. But so generally kind of coming out of the top 10 there, I like DJ Moore a lot. He was good with Fields. I think when Caleb comes there, he'll be even better. Puka, I put here at 12, although I really don't plan to take Puka. Not high on Garrett Wilson. I think there's a lot of risk there that Rodgers could get hurt again, or could be not that good again. Again,
All right, could be the vice president.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're seeing here CeeDee Lamb went number 1. This team is on the board with number 2 here. McCaffrey and CeeDee Lamb, usually they almost always go 1. Underdog tends to favor receivers. And I told you why, because it's a boom or bust league. So you're going to see receivers go a lot higher than you would in other drafts playing on here. And you need to be prepared for that. You need to get ahead of that. You don't want to get behind that, or you'll wind up not having any receivers at the end of the draft. Tyreek went number 3 there. Jefferson went number 4. A lot of the people that play underdog, they look at this. This is the overall ADP. So this tells me pretty much what everyone else is going to do. Most people follow ADP within a few picks. They use this as their guide, and then they pick maybe 1 or 2 up or 1 or 2 down from here in their guide. I'm going to actually go with I'm on here over Chase. A little bit less injury risk there. You know, I do like, if Higgins is gone, I think that'll be more balls for Chase. I love Burrow. He's had some injury problems, but I'm a big Amon fan there. Really, you know, the players I take, I think are not as important as kind of getting the overall feel for how this works, and for kind of the roster structure and strategy is what we really want to go for here. All right, so Chase, of course, fell at 7, Bijan at 8, Puka at 9. Over here is, again, telling us who's likely to go. It's nice having this guide. You'll see most people pretty much follow ADP. And then what most people do is look for value within ADP. So, for example, if you're picking at number 20 and there's a player that's ADP is 25, most people see that as value. The problem is you can't win in the tournament by sticking to the ADP, because that's how most people play. You're going to need to have a team that's different than how other people build their teams. So you need some unique strategies. I gave you guys early, one of my unique strategies that I use is I like to get Najee and Jalen Warren. That way I don't have an injury risk. I always have a good running back there, and it doesn't take up a dead spot for me. Of course, that's not until much later in the draft. It'll be interesting to see where Barkley goes here. Yeah, there went Barkley. I'm really hoping DJ Moore falls to me here. I think that's kind of a reach. I'm going to start to queue up some of the guys that I'm very high on. Mike Evans is a guy I feel like doesn't get his respect. His numbers last year were great. He's had a lot of big seasons where he's been great. I'm very high on Mike Evans over guys like, even though Evans is older, but it's a stable returning situation. Devontae Adams, I don't trust his quarterbacking. I like Diggs a lot. I've drafted a lot of Diggs. He's getting older, but I like Diggs a lot. I'd like to get another good receiver here. I usually in the 3rd round like to go with ETN. He usually drops to me in the 3rd round. As you can see, his ADP is 34. So I have a pretty good idea that he might make it around to me. Usually in the 3rd round, I like to either get Laporta if he drops to me, or ETN. If both of those are gone, it'll be an interesting decision we can all talk about. Before I was taking Jalen Hurts in the third. I'm not as high on Hurts anymore. So I love that DJ Moore fell to me. If we look at Moore's numbers, 238 last year, he's young, he's improving, his quarterbacking is getting better. So I feel like I'm really happy with that. Remember, I had DJ Moore in my top 10. To me, I just got 2 first-round picks already here. Anybody have any observations on what you're seeing so far? Devontae Smith, that's a really high pick for him. So you want,
I don't like that.
Yeah, so to research these, you usually on my phone, I can just click into it and you can see his ADP is like a 3rd-round player. That's a bit of a reach there. One of the most popular strategies on Underdog is stacking. I don't stack because I'm trying to build teams differently than the 200 other thousand people that are being here. But if you follow Underdog, they teach stacking. So stacking means getting the quarterback, receiver, and tight end all from the same team. And you're basically betting that in those playoff weeks at the end of the season, that if your receiver or tight end scores, it means your quarterback scored. And so you're kind of hoping that you get to the end and those 3 guys just get hot. To me, that's a high risk strategy to take. And it's a strategy that a lot of people take on this site. So I want to go kind of, upstream if that's how they're all going. Josh Allen's still on the board. If he falls to me in the 3rd round, that's something that we need to consider. His ADP is 21, right? So if we divide that by 12, he should be going in the 2nd round. He's still on the board coming around to the 3rd round. So let's just start to look at who we like. Remember, I'm very numbers driven. So somebody like Debo, who had a 300 and a 213, those are numbers that I like to see. That at least shows me he's capable of doing this again. Granted, a lot has changed, with the team since then. But he's somebody that I would like over a Tank Dell, for example. To me, he's smaller, injury prone. You're betting that he's going to double his numbers. That he just hasn't done that yet. Could he do it? Sure, but it's not as likely to happen. Let's put into the queue here the guys I talked about that we really want, either ETN or Laporta. Sometimes when I go at the end of the 3rd round, both these guys wind up falling to me. Keenan Allen here is a bit of a reach. We don't even know if he's going to be back to the Chargers. Also, I think the Chargers are going to be a run-first team under Harbaugh. That's how he has always been at Michigan and when he was with the 49ers. Anybody else here that you guys think I should consider? Ayuk is usually a 2nd.
I like Ayuk. There you go. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, he's usually a 2nd-round pick because I have 2 receivers already. That would be an interesting one, but just because Jeremiah called it, we will go with this. Imagine if this is the one that wins the 2 million. That would be a lot of fun, and you guys all help draft it. I would have to give you guys a stake in it. So you heard it here. Everybody who helps me make picks, if this is the winning lottery ticket, I'm not saying we're splitting it equal, but but there'll be a fair cut for you guys for helping me out here. All right, so coming into 4th round, a mid 4th round pick. Normally, you can play. You have 3 receivers plus a flex. Keep in mind, by the time we get to round 6, that's the dead zone. You got to be done with taking receivers by then, and I'll show you how it gets there. So normally, I like to go receivers here. And this is I usually like to come out of the first 5 rounds with for sure my 3 receivers. You have to have them down, and then my either 1 running back and the tight end. That's usually my go-to top 5 that I like to kind of get coming out of this. So by ADP here, we should be starting to see Waddle and the Neighbors. I'm not drafting the rookie. We don't know where he's going. Waddle is solid. Cooper Kupp, I'm for sure staying away from. I don't know why people want to swing on him. He did not look good when he came back last year at all. I like Zay Flowers a lot. We talked about him earlier this year. Amari Cooper is another guy who just has a proven track record. His numbers are there every year at receiver. I'll be really happy if Laporta falls to me here. I'd even consider Kelsey here if he's still on the board. Let's hop over here to tight ends. And no, they both went, right? Laporta went, Kelsey went. Love seeing Derrick Henry going here in the 4th. Did we see Jacobs go yet? No. You got to consider Jacobs at this
And
point.
James Cook.
Yeah, Cook to me, I think Cook's numbers will stay the same. I don't really see him getting better. It was a good year for him. I definitely think he's the best back on the board.
Yeah, I think Jacobs will have a big year. I mean, Aaron Jones had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons behind that Green Bay line. Just imagine what Jacobs can do. Jacobs is one of the top 3 running backs in the league today.
Yeah, Jacobs, and again, he has the ceiling, he has the track record. He had this 300 that was here before. So that's one of the things I like to see in a player that they've already done where I want them to go. Given the choice between two players, right? If I have to pick, if there isn't anybody that has done it before, then you got to pick the best available player on the board here. So this, I think down here shows us our roster build. So we've got 4 receivers now. And so Cook, yeah, so Jacobs went. We could have took Jacobs even in the 4th round there.
I like
Or-
Kenneth Walker coming up too.
Yeah, Walker to me, this is just kind of seems to be where he's at. He seemed like an impressive running back last year, but he's a 184. To me, I look at and this is where by the eye test, Kenneth Walker in real life and by the eye test is so much better than Najee Harris. It's night and day. But when you unpack the fantasy number, Najee is the same 180 as Kenneth Walker. And that was a bad year for Najee. And Najee has a ceiling of 263. With a good quarterback, Najee had good numbers. So this is why I actually like Najee better than Kenneth Walker. And I can get Najee a lot later. It's a little risky not to have one running back at this point. I got to kind of start to look at what do I want to do here.
And Derrick Henry had a really slow start to his career, so maybe Najee will follow suit.
Could happen, and again, if I'm going to grab him and Warren, I like having the protection in case they get hurt. I usually take them in back-to-back picks. I'm a big fan of George Kittle. He's a little bit injury prone. In real fantasy, he's very hot and cold, and you don't want that. In this, you want that. You want hot and cold. If you look at his numbers, he's very steady in the 170s and the 160s. That's the same numbers that Zay Flowers has. He's the same numbers as Jaden Reed. Look at Jaden Reed, 180, and Kittle's 170. People love Addison, 180. Kittle's 170, and Kittle's a consistent tight end. So, again, by the eye test, people like Addison and Jordan Reed are way better than Kittle, but the numbers don't prove that, and you're getting them in a tight end. Christian Kirk is another one everyone's been hyping this year, that Kirk is going to have this bounce back year. Well, look what Kirk actually did in his year that was so great. He still didn't crack 200. So even if he goes back to being that good, that's about what we can expect from him now that Ridley's gone there. Addison, I don't like. I think a lot of Addison's numbers came because Jefferson was hurt. Now that Jefferson's back and he's the number 1, I'm kind of down on Addison. If he falls to me, if there's nothing else left, I'll still take him. Brian Thomas is the rookie I actually like. I'm really hoping Buffalo or Kansas City can trade up to get him. And so now we've got 5 receivers here in terms of this. Yeah. And which you normally don't want to do, but I love it. We got remember, you want big players. Like any one of these 5 guys can get a 20 or 30 point week, which can win you a lot of points. You want that in best ball. You want that boom or bust. All right, so we are 5 rounds in. I for sure want to start looking at tight end. I don't think any of these guys will make it back around to me. Ingram last year, I like, if we look at his numbers, 170. And again, losing Ridley should be good for him. Kyle Pitts' numbers, if he goes back to his rookie year, he is 140. To me, that's like a good year for him. And he just doesn't score touchdowns. So and I'm also not a Kirk Cousins fan. I think he's 35 coming off an injury. It'll be an improvement, but there's just a lot of risk on reaching for him there. Kincaid, everyone's very high on. But if you look at his actual numbers, if he gets a 20% increase from this, he's still not where Ingram is. So there's no reason to be taking those guys over Ingram by the numbers. Bowers is just a complete wild card in there. I don't mind that, if he's a backup or a late player. We for sure can't go receiver anymore. And this is what I mean by the receiver dead zone. So at this point, I'm on the board here. Let me figure out.
I like Bowers and Pitts. I mean,
Yeah.
Sam Laporta was a rookie last season.
Yeah, I
Sam,
mean, but
I
that's
would-
really rare for a tight end, and we don't know what his quarterback situation is going to be yet. To me, Montgomery is pretty steady. I don't so we're taking just a steady running back in there.
I'd probably stay away from Kelsey though. Kelsey's older than Rob Gronkowski. So I think age is going to start to catch up at that tight end position.
Yeah. Yeah, tight end, typically I'll leave tight end till the last here. And so let's see where we're at here. Unless Laporta falls to me in like the third round or fourth round. All right, so we're at 6. So we're gonna look to quarterback next. And then so that'll be 7, and then in 8, 9. So this is let's see if this will load. This gives us this view of the draft. This is really important to be using this. You need to know when your next picks are going to come here. So this is pretty small, but my next picks are going to be, I'm over here in the yellow, 78, right? 91. Yeah. So if my plan's to get Najee and Jalen, I need to take them here, 78 and 91. And then I'm letting quarterback fall to me at 102. Right? That's kind of how this would go. If I take a quarterback now, then I'm going to probably lose both those running backs that I like there. Never actually done one of these on the desktop. It's a little hard to maneuver here.
Have you considered especially being the way it goes, taking quarterbacks back to back after that? So you get 2 middle of the road guys.
Yeah, exactly. I do really love that Dak's still on the board at this point. So if we're queuing these
Jordan
up,
Love there.
Yeah, if we're queuing these up in order that I like them, to me, Purdy can only go up, and he was at 300 last year. He's only going to get better. He got better in the playoffs, so I expect his numbers to go up.
Herbert.
Herbert has this almost 400 from 2 years ago, right? Last year he was hurt. This was considered a down year for him at 290. So,
I figure 290 will be about accurate. Harbaugh is going to run the ball a lot more. They're not going to be a pass first team.
Yeah. Justin Fields is another one. Some people are high on him, but if you look at, this was his best year he's had in his career so far, was at 300. So that doesn't, that puts us kind of in the middle of where we would want to be. So I'm going to take Dodgy here to get my second running back. And so, Fields has not had anything here. This part about the Raiders, I think that's dead. I think the only place left for him is New England, and that's not going to be good for his stats. I think, if we look at Trevor Lawrence, right, he's had a 300, 300. If we remember back to our sheet, 300 gets us in the top 10. So basically we're looking for guys that can get to 300. And then like Jeremiah was saying, we might want to take 2 of them if there's 2 of them there. Jaden Daniels, while I'm not as high on him in real life and don't want my Patriots to take him for fantasy, I think he is going to run around a lot. And he's kind of a longer shot. Kyler Murray runs along a lot. Tua's never had a 300 season in his career. So if you're thinking about taking Tua, you're basically picking outside of the top 10 almost for sure. I mean, last year was a career year for him. He led the league in rush and yards passing. He had 29 touchdowns. You look at those numbers on the surface and you're like, I'm going to just wait and take Tua. Well, because he doesn't run at all, only 74 carries. This is a really low number for him here.
He's also a great quarterback to have in the month of September, or those warm months of football when they're really airing the football out.
Which is the exact opposite of what you want in best ball, because you remember in best ball you have to win those last 3 weeks in order to get into the prize money. So you want, if anything, you want players that are good in December. Which a lot of times rookie running backs tend to come on later in the year for teams. That's another reason I really like to go for rookie running backs. We're for sure going to see if we can get some running backs. In fact, because we got Montgomery, I think we're going to hold off here. I should have took Najee instead of Montgomery there. If we can get Jordan Love. If we can't get Jordan Love, then we'll take Jalen Whalen.
Can you trade in this league?
No, there's no trades, no free agency. There's no contact with the managers that are in this league. And that's on purpose, because how could I have 50 leagues? How could I possibly, manage free agency? Yeah, tough decision here. I think let's remove him and go with Jalen back to our original plan. Yeah, I would have liked to have I would have liked to have got my quarterback here and then had these two as my running backs. But I was a little talking too much and lost track of where we were at that time. But but we still have a good build. We're for sure gonna be looking quarterbacks now, right? If Bowers falls to us next round, I don't expect Hawkinson is a great guy that a lot of people are sleeping on. He's likely going to be out for the beginning of the season. But if you look at his numbers,
I love grabbing guys that are going to come into the season injured or have a suspension, because like you said, you want to gear up for those December games or late in the season. I'll totally put a spot on them for my bench, even a couple players. I'll make room for them on my bench, and then hopefully try to find something else in the waiver wire deeper in the draft.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So we're going Fields. I don't love Fields here. We're going Trevor Lawrence.
Goff. And you definitely want to be the first one to attack the waiver wire, because every week there's always
well, again, with best ball, there is no waiver wire. We're drafting, everyone gets drafted tonight. So that if you have 20-round draft, there's no one left really to put on the waiver wire. Yeah, so I don't love these quarterback options. Probably going to try to get Jaden Daniels here. We're going to have to wait on Hawkinson.
So if you did this draft last year, I'm assuming no one picked up on Puka, right? That's just an elite player sitting in the free agency, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's no free agency, so he's just not on any of the teams. A few people had Kyron Williams, like those teams did really well. I had a lot of A-Chain last year. I saw him scoring a lot in the preseason. And of course he got hurt, wasn't there for me down the stretch, but that's why I'm staying away from him this year. Is getting him in the 10th round is different than going in, now he's going in the 2nd round. All right, we'll take Trevor Lawrence here because he's got a 300 in his career at least. Jared Goff, this is another one that surprises you, right? 2 years in a row, he's at 300 and 290. So he's right there in terms of fantasy production, and doesn't really get talked about as much as those guys.
Yeah, I put him like in the same tier as I put him in the same tier as like Kirk Cousins, right? Quarterbacks that you don't consider elite, but put up elite numbers.
Well, and Cousins, we're looking at Cousins numbers here. So his 2021 and 22 were his best years, and he barely broke 300 in his best years with Jefferson when they were both younger and in their prime. So to me, that's his ceiling. He's not gonna that's why in Atlanta, he's not gonna have Jefferson anymore. He's older. He's coming off an injury. They're gonna lean on Bijan. I do not see him being a top 10, 300 quarterback. If you look at the numbers on the surface, he looks like he should be, he should be back there, but I don't see it in the numbers.
He may not start the season either.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. He always puts up numbers. His big knack is just getting that playoff win.
Well, his numbers are not there though. That's not true. We just looked at his numbers. His numbers are 300s. That's like barely top 10. That's not somebody that's worth drafting until, as you can see, he's still not drafted here.
And he can't win in prime time.
Well, those types of things don't matter as much in fantasy. Rodgers is another one. If you look at Rodgers' number, I think he was the league MVP this year, 336, right? His last year in Green Bay, Rodgers was a 256. to me, like the best case scenario is he goes back to his last case year in Green Bay, and that team didn't make the playoffs, and it wasn't a fancy year for Rodgers at all. Yeah, here he is. He was 251 that year. I mean, that's not good at all.
That was his last year in Green Bay.
His last year in Green Bay. Yeah, so it's very different, when you see the players by the numbers here. I'm going to take off and hope that Daniels. What happened to Hawkinson? I guess somebody grabbed him.
Yeah, three picks before you.
So we have two quarterbacks that I don't love, right? They're probably fringe top 10 guys, but they both had 300 years points before. Goff has had 2 in a row. He's got his receivers back. There's no changes there. It's pretty stable there. Trevor, last year it seemed like a down year for them for whatever reason. And losing Ridley's not going to help him, but at least he has some track record. Trevor also runs the ball. And I think we said 2 years ago, he was well above 300, which Cousins has never been that high. I think there's more upside there. All right, let's just look at tight end. Yeah, so at this point, there's not really any tight ends that I care for. It's almost worth waiting quite a bit on this.
And how far down is Mike Gesicki?
Probably far. I mean, Gesicki, he's back with New England?
No, he's with Cincinnati now, and he's probably going to get a lot of looks.
I don't agree. He's never been a guy who's done much. If we look at his numbers, right, he's never.
It was Hayden Hurst till he got here.
Hayden Hurst has never put up fantasy relevant numbers.
He had a pretty good year in 22 here. Was it 22?
Let's look and see if it's remember, guys like that we were looking at, like Kittle, were 170. I bet
He didn't have Kittle numbers. But decent numbers for a tight end.
Decent numbers are like, I don't know. How do you spell his name?
Hurst.
I bet he's never broke 100 in his career. Yeah, these are not even close. Like, these are awful. That's not.
If you're in a 10, 12, 20 team league, you want a top 10 at every position.
Look at Dawson Knox says it breaks 100, and no one's even going to sniff Dawson Knox. He's had 100. He's had 139. This guy will be out there in the last round. Like, these are, you got to look at the numbers. Like, it seems like Hayden Hurst is better than these people, but the fantasy numbers don't translate. And that's why really looking at the stats, and this part of doing these drafts is it makes it so easy to drill into the player's stats here and really look at these numbers on these guys. So here we're kind of looking for receivers that have upside. Lisa was on our show was saying she thought the KC might go for McConkey. I don't know. Someone just took him anyways. Gabe Davis is boomer bust. He's decent in this. I like Dotson to have some better quarterbacking. He could get better. Right now we're kind of in long shots, right? Mims should be the number 1 receiver in Denver.
Number 2, I'll figure out.
I think Sutton is kind of up there.
Yeah.
Quentin Richardson, haven't seen a lot in him to think that he's much of a sleeper, but we're reaching at this point. Curtis Samuel, I like a lot. If he could sign with KC. Zay Jones, I think, will have better numbers now that Ridley's gone. Zay Jones was good 2 years ago. He was a 157, right? That's pretty good at this point. Let's look at what's out here for rookies. I really want to get Blake Corum. Jerome Ford, if you look at his numbers last year, 189. That's fantastic for players that are still on the board here. We're going to take Ford. All right, so we've got 4 running backs, 5 receivers. We need to nail that tight end spot if there's anything left. I don't like any of these tight ends. At this point, I'm just going to wait till the end. Jonnu Smith, I think, could be interesting, signing with Miami. He had almost 100 last year. If Miami everyone in Miami seems to score. I think he's worth a flyer. At this point, we're in basically wait to the end on tight ends and grab 4 of them. And then you let the best ball rotation kind of, plug in whichever one scores. It's not much left for running backs at this point, so we might as well bet on a rookie. Of the rookies, I like Marshawn Lloyd the best. Zach is clearly the backup. Roshan is now buried on the depth chart there. Gibson went to New England, could be a decent play. But Devontae Foreman is probably way down here. He's about 239 or something. There it is. See what's left for us at quarterback. Rodgers is still out there. Baker was decent last year. He was 290. Geno Smith 2 years ago was a 314. He was hurt last year, had kind of a down year. Corum fell to us. I love that.
Stafford could have a better year too with a healthy Cooper Cup to start off the season, and Puka a new WR1. So he's got a couple options.
Yeah, I don't think Stafford's not on the board anymore. But I think Cooper's done, but I still think Stafford is, is decent. So we're gonna put Baker up here. Yeah, we really don't need any of these receivers unless Samuel falls to us. I have to get one more quarterback. Yeah, Russ is still out there. Bryce Young, maybe he can turn it around. Might be worth a flyer given this team.
I don't like Bryce Young a lot. I didn't.
I like
he looked
whoever
like a
the
deer in the
Panthers
headlights
draft at
last year.
receiver in fantasy, because that's clearly what they need is a receiver.
Yeah, they traded for Deontay Johnson. I mean, him and Thielen is not bad, but it'd be nice to see them get somebody else.
It's a shame that they had McCaffrey on their roster and Brian Burns, and they traded both of them away and couldn't even manage to get a first-round pick out of either one of those guys.
The local Carolina news here, that's where I am right now. My parents is talking up this Pearsall guy for Carolina. But I saw some of his Gators games. To me, he's another Adam Thielen. And I don't see how he's gonna, mix in with the guys they already have. Even Deontay Johnson, who they traded for, is kind of a possession receiver. So I don't get that move. Baker just went. I think we'll take Bryce over Russ just for the upside. So you can see we're at pick 163 now. Bryce would be kind of a reach here, actually. I'm better off taking Samuel, hoping he signs with the Chiefs. And hoping one of these quarterbacks makes it to me on the way back. We really don't need any more running backs. We've got 5 running backs. We got to start going tight end. We've got 14. We got 6 spots left, so let's queue up our tight ends here. Jatavian Sanders is a good-looking rookie. Yeah, Waller's probably washed up, but might be worth a flyer on this team. Hunter Henry is touchdown or bust. Musgrave seemed like a decent rookie. Probably like him the best of that list. Yeah, he's good.
Just went.
Yeah. Joni Smith, like him there. The Seattle guy is on my list. Is he here? Noah Fant. Seattle just let go of all their other tight ends. Let's see him on here. Oh yeah, he already got picked. We're looking for deep sleepers at tight end now. Dawson Knox was good 2 years ago. Gesicki, yeah, I really just don't even see the ceiling there. Like his best year ever, he only had 2 touchdowns. They don't seem to throw to the tight end there. I kind of like this Parkinson. He was a backup in Seattle, just signed with the Rams to be their starter. I used to like Noah Gray, but KC just brought in Irv Smith. I don't know why they did that. He was kind of a bust, wasn't he, for Cincinnati?
Absolutely. All he'd catch is little 3-4 yard routes and get a yard afterwards. I don't think he had a 10-yard completion all season.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Is David Njoku still on the list or no?
No, he's
Oh,
on.
he got to be gone.
Yeah. Yeah, Rogers always liked to throw to the tight end. Conklin, I don't like Jets players, but look at his numbers. He's had 3 years of steady 100, right? That's decent. So I think we got to put him on our list. I really don't want Waller. Waller's
Half
been
for the upside.
there hasn't even been any upside the last 3 years. Look at how bad he's been.
I mean, look at
Has
his
it been 3
quarterback.
years?
He's had Jones and Daniel Carr. I mean, going back like 4 or 5 years, he was decent. I mean, he was good with the Raiders, but that's a long time ago.
He's still
It
on the,
doesn't
but
seem
I
that long
think he's
ago, but it
still
was with the Raiders.
he's still one of the highest paid tight ends in the league. I mean, if you're the Giants, you're paying him because you're hoping there's got to be some upside there, right? If not, they should trade him. It's a lot of cap space he's eating up. Just like Dak, I'm wondering when the Cowboys are going to reconstruct Dak Prescott's contract, because I think his cap hits at 59 million. That is a lot for one player. That's why they weren't able to sign any running backs. They don't have any cap space right now.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, we heard they were working on Dak's contract, but didn't get it done in time. All right, while these tight ends are in the queue, let's go back to look at this view and just see if there's anything interesting here. So let's break down the first round. This is going pretty pat. It's a little high for Brees Hall, but there's been a lot of Brees Hall lovers. I mean, he was awesome the last month of the season. So I can see why people might be doing that. Pretty much across the board here. We can see Barkley. Some people really love Barkley. This was a real surprise. He's been going end of third, fourth round. I don't
Yeah, I
get.
mean, if he's healthy, he's definitely one of the top running backs in the league.
Yeah, ADP for Nico Collins is about here, 13. So this is a real fall for Nico Collins. I'm not sold on Nico Collins being that high. I mean, I think he's good, but I think once the other guy comes back, Dell, we'll have to wait and see. This way too high for Drake London. I mean, you're basically betting on him being, a top 20 player in fantasy. That's crazy. They should have took the stack here. They could have got Allen and Diggs. That's a nice stack to have, even though I don't usually like the stacks. Olav Keenan, I think, is a reach here. Ayuk really fell to us. That worked out nice. Not somebody he goes in the second round almost all the time, and I think that's overpaying for him.
Yeah, he was my steal last year.
Yeah, last year I was getting him in the fourth or fifth round. It was really nice.
I was stealing him and Taylor in all my leagues. Jonathan Taylor,
yeah, if he was falling, he still went pretty high in some of these leagues. T. Higgins, right where he's been going. I don't like him there. If he goes to New England or Carolina, that'll be the end of his fantasy relevance. I like Metcalf. I like ETN, Debo, Kelsey going at the end of the third. Well, here's a Kelsey Mahomes stack. You can see what they're doing there. Waddle falling to the fourth is pretty good value. Laporta falling to the fourth is great value.
Where did Marvin Harrison go? Assuming I think he's going to get drafted by the Cardinals, because who do the Cardinals have in their receiver room right now?
Yeah, I don't know, because Marquise Brown's gone.
Yeah, I
Where
mean,
did
they got McBride as their tight end that everybody seems to love. But they need receivers for sure. The thing is, it's such a deep year at receiver, and I could see Arizona trading down to somebody who wants one of those quarterbacks, maybe, um, or taking a receiver. Harrison, if Harrison gets to
Hey,
them.
are we going to do the show the night of the draft where we can analyze the first round?
Yeah, that'll be fun, right?
Yeah, I think so for sure. The drama, that's must watch TV.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm the Bears, what's stopping them from grabbing Marvin Harrison at 1? I mean, if Justin Fields is as talented as other teams think he is, why not just throw in Marvin Harrison and stack that offense and run it back with Fields, and then you
That
can
pick is
sign
worth too
more.
much. They have Caleb Williams graded as the 4th highest quarterback coming out of college ever, and I don't know how long they've been doing this.
Crazy.
But
It's crazy.
I mean, so the pick is too valuable to not take Caleb Williams. I'm not a big believer. I don't know that he'll be a bust. I don't think he's going to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks ever.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just hope he
but
doesn't come in with a big ego.
Cameron, there seems to be no market for Fields.
No,
Nobody.
there doesn't.
The Raiders.
Yeah, all the
went for Gardner
teams.
Mitchell.
You're
the
right. All the
Raiders
teams
wanted
that are talking about him going to, they've already found a quarterback.
Yeah, so it's like dried up. I mean, they'll be lucky to get a 4th or 5th round pick for him at this time, at this point, and they're kind of like stuck with dealing him. You gotta take Caleb. They'll get killed. If Caleb turns into the next Mahomes and they traded down, like you just can't have that risk, even if he is a bust. Or if for some reason they didn't want Caleb, they could trade down to number 2 with Washington. There's no scenario where Caleb doesn't go number 1. In my
If
opinion.
I'm the Vikings, I'd rather take a shot on Justin Fields than Sam Darnold.
Well, they won't trade him in the division.
That's division.
Yeah,
And
true.
speaking of the
Good point.
Vikings, there have been a lot of rumors here in Cincinnati today. Have you all heard that?
With
In
T.
Cincinnati
Higgins?
about what?
Yeah, T. Higgins and a couple picks for Justin Jefferson. I don't buy it at all. I don't think it's going to happen. It puts them in cap hell, but it's getting a lot of traction around here. People I talk to.
I think what the Bengals need to do is trade Higgins, or
I agree,
they
and
need
not for Jefferson.
they need to reconstruct Burrow's contract and then re-sign Higgins. But I think they should trade him, try to get a 1st and a 3rd round pick out of it.
Yeah,
Jefferson
Jefferson to me just doesn't seem to be a fit in that offense. So that would be a very weird signing if that happened. I don't know.
And the thing about that too
played
is they
together in
haven't
college.
signed Jefferson's. He's due for a contract next year or in 2 years. There's
think
no way the
this
Bengals will be
coming
able
year.
to afford two $30 million receivers with a $50 million quarterback. That's eating up a ton of your cap.
1,000%.
But you're saying
Cameron,
the
you're
same
right.
thing I said to people, and I hope they're watching because it's absurd to even think that way.
Absolutely.
Hey, you guys could grab Casey Allaire, the running back, if you're trying to reunite the whole LSU team up there.
Yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, I'm
Just got
good.
rid of him.
Let's just see what else was here for interesting picks and kind of wrapping this up. So third, going into the 4th, Adunze went here in the 4th before Neighbors. That's really interesting, right? In real life, Neighbors will be the higher pick. My fear with Adunze is that he'll go to like the Giants or somewhere, where that would be not good for him in fantasy. So I don't see good landings for any of these rookies here, unless the Chargers take one. But I mean, the Chargers took a receiver last year, Quentin Richardson. And so I don't really see the Chargers doing that. Jacobs went here in the 4th. I think that's pretty good value. We see Jalen Hurts going in the 4th.
Yeah, it's a good value. I think Jacobs will finish top 3 in rushing this next season if he can stay healthy. Do they still have A.J. Dillon as their backup?
No, Dillon signed with Minnesota, right? Or is that Jones? Is that who you mean, Jones?
No, Jones signed with Minnesota, but I know
Yeah.
AJ Dillon was their backup running back.
Oh, Dylan. Yeah, I think he is cut too. I thought I heard he was interviewing it with Dallas. Maybe that was just a rumor. I don't think Dylan can play though. He's had his chances the last 2 years with Jones's injuries. So 5th round here, these picks are all pretty good. Cook is good value there. I don't like Jones going here. To me, he's aging running back. Too soon for a quarterback here who's not gonna for sure gonna be in our top 5, right? Don't like these tight ends here. I think Andrews has not had a good year in a while. McBride hasn't had any good years yet. I don't know why people are so high on him. Richardson, it's too much of an injury risk. Mixon went here. We had a good talk about Mixon today that's put him back on my list to consider. Probably would have liked him there. This is the pick I would have just took Najee there if I was paying attention. Don't like Pollard there. There's Njoku. I like him over Kincaid, so that was a good pick. Here comes the quarterback run. Kyler Murray's going this high. That's interesting. Jordan Love, Tua, Herbert, Purdy. I would have wished one of these guys had fallen to us. Love, Purdy, or Herbert.
Yeah,
Like-
I think Herbert fell in that draft pretty good.
Yeah, he went to 89. His ADP is in the 90s actually, him and Purdy. But none of them fell to us at 102. We got stuck with Trevor Lawrence. I don't love. And then we're kind of filling out with quarterbacks.
Herbert's been the best quarterback out of that draft, though. I mean, I know Lawrence was drafted number 1, but Herbert, and I thought the Dolphins, man.
Herbert went in our draft, Cam. He went with Burrow and
Burrow.
Tua.
Yeah, you're correct. Burrow and Tua. Yeah.
And he's not the best quarterback out of that
No,
draft.
Burrow would be number 1 there, but Herbert's number 2. Number 2 for sure. I think the Dolphins definitely dropped the ball on drafting Tua instead of Herbert. I still think they regret that decision to this day, even though they say Tua's accurate. I mean, Justin's got some crazy arm power. It's right there with Josh Allen. He fits it into the smallest windows, throws that shouldn't be possible.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does this year. That's one of the teams that seems like they are on the upswing with Harbaugh coming in and all the talent they have.
Yeah, that's a good quarterback for Harbaugh.
Yeah, this is going to wrap things up for another good show. We will be back on tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be doing some college basketball, some NBA, as well as continuing our quarterback rankings in fantasy football. So look forward to seeing you guys back here tomorrow.